This is Audible.
Listen and Live Audio presents How to Make Someone Love You in 90 Minutes or Less by Nicholas Boothman, and read by me, the author. Introduction. Who says you can't hurry love? Can you really kindle the flames of love in 90 minutes or less? And why 90 minutes and not 27 minutes or 6 hours? It sounds crazy and shallow. What does it? When I published my first book, How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less, people thought that was crazy too, until they learned that we actually decide whether or not we like people in the first 2 seconds of seeing them. By the time 90 seconds have passed, you can be well on your way to turning a first impression into a lasting relationship, be it for friendship, business, or romance. In friendship and business, this precious 90 seconds can have you off to a flying start. Given the right circumstances, with both of you sending certain signals and talking in a certain way at the right time, it can also be a prelude to love, taking you from attraction to connection to intimacy to commitment. For a small percentage of couples, these events unfold almost instantaneously, causing them to fall in love at first sight. Most couples intuitively sense the process, but have to fumble their way through by trial and error before weeks, months, or sometimes even years later, they finally click. But the process doesn't have to be so protracted, and you don't have to leave it to chance. In order to write this book, I studied men and women all over the world as they connected and made an emotional impact upon one another. I analyzed almost 2,000 romantic relationships, from couples who fell in love at first sight to those who were friends for years before becoming romantically involved. I spoke to couples who'd been together for 50 years and teenagers who'd been passionately in love for just a few months. I interviewed past and present partners of the same men and women to discover what they got wrong the first time and what they learned from their experiences and how they got it right with their new partners. This work reinforced something I've always known, that there is someone for everyone, and they often find each other when they least expect it. Through all this research, one thing became clear. It's not about length of time, it's about emotional progression, with each stage unfolding in precisely the right order. If you understand the architecture of falling in love, the stages involved, and how to build and choreograph them properly, it's absolutely possible for two people to fall in love in 90 minutes or less. Through all this research, one thing became clear. It's not about length of time, it's about emotional progression, with each stage unfolding in precisely the right order. If you understand the architecture of falling in love, the stages involved, and how to build and choreograph them properly, it's absolutely possible for two people to fall in love in 90 minutes or less. Researcher Dr. Arthur Aron found this out in a series of experiments he conducted at the University of California. A man and a woman who had never met put in a room together for 90 minutes. They were each told that the other person was going to like them, and were then instructed to exchange intimate information such as their most embarrassing moments and how they would feel if they lost a partner. Every so often, a researcher would come in and tell them to express what they liked about each other. They were also told to gaze into each other's eyes for about 2 minutes without talking. At the end of the experiment, they left through separate doors. Many of the couples confessed to feeling deeply attracted and close to the other person. Indeed, the very first pair of subjects married soon after and invited Dr. Aron and his colleagues to the wedding. The conclusion is that with the right person, specific body language, and mutual self-disclosure, you can bring about strong feelings of love and intimacy. Dr. Aron affirmed that the subject's expectation that the other person was going to like them had a huge effect. If you ask people about their experience of falling in love, over 90% will say a major factor was discovering that the other person liked them. My research revealed 3 other simple truths. 1. Falling in love and staying in love are completely separate events. 2. We don't fall in love with other people, we fall in love with the feelings we get when we're with them. And 3. Certain people balance us and make us feel complete socially and psychologically, while others make us feel insecure and tired, zap our self-confidence, or turn us into something we're not. People in vibrant, long-term relationships are very aware that they complement rather than antagonize one another. When you meet the person who balances and completes you, the one you trust and feel comfortable with, you have found your matched opposite. I coined this term because it describes the way you and your partner fit together or click, and when it happens, you both know it. Being with this person is simultaneously an indescribable joy and an enormous relief. He or she will be like you in many ways, but you're opposite in certain key areas, and it's highly likely you'll have a happy, committed, and long-term loving relationship. This audiobook will show you how to find your matched opposite and tell you what to do once you have. By now you may be wondering, who am I to tell you how to make someone fall in love with you? Well, it's a good question. I've been studying human behavior for the past 20 years. For the last 14, I've been a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. This discipline examines how, without thinking, we use words to empower or demoralize ourselves and others. By the time we're about 13 years old, most of us have developed fixed patterns of thinking. In fact, we've learned to think without thinking. We act and react in predictable ways. Every day we go out into the world and experience it through our 5 senses, then put that information into words. It's a process called making sense, and it goes like this. You put your experiences into words. Your words become thoughts. Your thoughts become ideas. Your ideas become actions. Your actions become habits. Your habits become your personality, and your personality becomes your destiny. As you get older, the same old processing patterns are still playing themselves out, but the pace has accelerated. In romance, he rejects you and whammo, a predictable and useless response. I feel bad, I'm going home to eat ice cream and watch some sitcoms with the dog. Or she turns up late because she hit traffic and whammo, a predictable and useless response. I can't stand it when I'm kept waiting, damn it. If you're unhappy with how certain aspects of your life are playing out, the best way to fix them is to make adjustments at the thinking without thinking level that's responsible for the problem. You've got to get back to the put your experiences into words level, also known as your self-talk. That interior dialogue we all have with ourselves. If your love life isn't happening, you can keep doing what you're doing and hope someone will turn up, or you can get to the root of the problem and make adjustments to your internal programming, looking at the cause of your dilemma, the way you're thinking, and not its effect. These adjustments will make a difference in the way you act and respond and will eventually transform your destiny. I earned my NLP credentials studying with the method's 2 founders, Drs. Richard Bandler and John Grinder, in New York, London, and Toronto. Before that, I worked for 25 years as a freelance fashion and advertising photographer. What I learned both as a fashion photographer and as a student of NLP led me to write a couple of books on turning first impressions into lasting relationships, one for the social arena and one for the business world. But when it comes to this audiobook, my best credentials are that after a few years of missteps, I was lucky enough to find my matched opposite more than 35 years ago, after each of us had come out of unhappy marriages. As a teenager, I was the guy that almost never got the girls. Fortunately, I was ambitious and I was optimistic. I joined a rock group, I learned to ride a horse, and got a part-time job delivering wedding cakes to hotels. As I met more and more people, I soon figured out it's not what you think, it's the way that you think it. It's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. And it's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. Before long, I was attracting and connecting with girls, but I learned the hard way that attracting and connecting is only the first step. Attracting and connecting with the right person for you is something else. I met a beautiful girl and married her, but the marriage broke up. In my early 20s, I moved to Portugal and opened a fashion photo studio in Lisbon. In making the rounds with my portfolio, one name seemed to crop up over and over in conversations with advertising agency people. Wendy. Wendy modeled for Yves Saint Laurent in Paris. She knows what she's talking about. Wendy danced with the National Ballet, you know. Wendy flies her own plane. No, I don't work with Wendy, and no, I haven't met her yet, I replied. What's more, I was getting fed up with hearing about her everywhere I went. Before long, Miss Perfect was at the top of my list of people I did not want to meet. Then an opportunity emerged when one of my new clients, the editor of the country's leading woman's magazine, called to ask if I would shoot the cover for an upcoming edition. She wanted a shot of 3 kittens sitting in a basket of wool. Where am I going to find 3 kittens? I asked myself the moment I'd put down the phone. Ooh, I know, said my inner rascal. Why don't you just call up Wonder Woman Wendy and let her take care of it? I tracked down her agency and dialed the phone number. The receptionist asked me to hold, and a few minutes later a voice came on the other end. Hello, this is Wendy. Hi, my name's Nicholas Boothman, and I'm a photographer. Yes, I know, she replied softly. I went on to tell her I needed 3 models, kittens. I'll also need a small basket, some balls of coloured wool, 2 pieces of chipboard 50 centimetres by 1 metre, 2 hinges, and some cooking foil. Now, most modelling agencies would tell a photographer to get stuffed if he tagged on a shopping list of props, but Wonder Woman just kept saying yes, calmly, after each of my requests. We finished by agreeing on a date and a time. At precisely 5 p.m. on the appointed day, my receptionist came into the studio area, followed by the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. An orchestra in my head just started playing as this calm, beautiful, impressive female turned to face me, leveled her bright blue eyes at mine, smiled, held out her hand and said, Hello, I'm Wendy. I have the kittens. You didn't ask for it, but on the way over I had them checked by a vet, and he gave them a mild sedative. We'll have to wait 30 minutes for it to take effect. I bought the chipboard and the hinges. I assume you're going to make a reflector. You didn't ask for screws, but I bought some. I assume you're going to glue the foil on the wood. You didn't ask for glue, but I bought that too. Wow. She was right. I was impressed and humbled. I was also drifting into some kind of gravity-free zone. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Yeah, she was extraordinarily beautiful, but it was her general presence that was getting to me. She was so gracious. While we waited for the kittens to mellow out, I started assembling the reflector. Would you give me a hand? I asked. She turned to face me and held up her palms. 2, if you'd like, she smiled. And my heart melted. There we were, kneeling on the floor, facing each other across the metre-long piece of chipboard. We began scrunching up the foil, Wendy from her end, me from mine, working our way towards the centre. When we arrived there, our hands touched momentarily. A rush of energy, bigger and wider than anything I'd ever felt, swept from my feet, up through my body, and out over my head, straight at her. I looked her directly in the eye, and I heard this voice. I know it was my own, but I didn't hear it from the inside like you normally do, and it said, This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever said, but I love you. The orchestra inside my head had been going like crazy, but suddenly it stopped. Wendy was looking straight at me. Oh my God, she said. What are we going to do now? I knew she felt the same way. I had found my matched opposite, and Wendy had found hers. What we did do, after I had completed the assignment, was spend hours and hours and hours talking. We had so much to say. We shared our hopes and dreams, our opinions and our experiences. We laughed at the same things, felt passionately about the same things. It was like a deep friendship set to music. Wendy and I had much in common, but there were also aspects of her that I sensed were not like me. She had patience and a mind for detail. She was strong, solid and private. The way she looked and listened and paid attention to me made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. We spent the next few weeks meeting whenever we could, talking and laughing, sharing and dreaming, and just being close. We've been together ever since. We've raised 5 children into adulthood, and we're still nuts about each other. The way we met has stayed fresh in both our minds, and the sheer romance of it all has had a strong binding effect. Yeah, we've had our tough and difficult days, but the idea of ending the relationship, of saying goodbye to the person who makes us feel complete, has never been an option. It will be like tearing our hearts in half. I guess it's pretty obvious to most people who know us that Wendy and I have a strong and happy marriage. People are always asking us for our secret. In the beginning, I brushed this question off, thinking that the answer was obvious: mutual respect, common interests, attraction, etc. But over the years, I began to realize that there might be more to it than meets the eye. So, using my NLP training, I decided to try and identify the common threads in all successful relationships, from dating through mating, and lay them out in a simple, practical, concrete way. I also wanted to show people how to make the most of their time and avoid depressing pitfalls, and help them learn from others' mistakes. Specifically, I set out to A. Find couples who have fallen deeply in love and stayed energized and amused with each other for a long time. B. Determine what all these couples have in common and what resources they draw upon. And C. Break the lessons they can teach us about meeting, connecting, and uniting with our matched opposite into a series of easy steps that anyone can follow. So, whether you're looking to find the love of your life or seeking to breathe new life into your existing relationship, don't sit back and relax. Pay attention and make up your mind to act upon what you're about to hear. Part 1. Get ready. The first steps towards falling in love are knowing yourself and finding the person who will complete you. Chapter 1. What is love? The Inuit people of the Arctic have dozens of words for snow, because snow, in all its forms, is central to their day-to-day life and their survival. In our culture, judging from songs, books, movies, love is essential to our lives, and yet we have only one word for a phenomenon that's infinitely complex and varied. Love takes so many forms. Everyone has an opinion on love, but is this universal and capricious emotion capable of definition? In the dictionary, the word love has more definitions than any other. Among them, love is a deep, tender, indefinable feeling of affection and concern towards a person, such as that arising from kinship, recognition of attractive qualities, or a sense of underlying oneness. That's a good definition as far as it goes, but love is so much more than that. It can be fleeting or enduring, tumultuous or companionable, joyous or anguished, and it changes from moment to moment, week to week, year to year. People have been trying to understand and explain love for millennia. For me, one of the best observations about it came from the ancient Greeks. In his dialogue Symposium, Plato suggests that we all search for our other half in hopes of becoming whole. He called this human desire for completeness the search for love. In the same dialogue, Plato's mentor Socrates said, "In our lover we seek and desire that which we do not have." No one has more to say on the subject of love than the great bard William Shakespeare. In A Midsummer Night's Dream he wrote, "The course of true love never did run smooth." And in Two Gentlemen of Verona he said, "Hope is a lover's staff, wherein, as you like it," he refers to love as madness. You don't have to be an artist or thinker to have insight into love. When I ask the question, "What is love?" at my workshops, everyone has a different response. 21-year-old Carol says it's butterflies in the belly and smiles all the time. 32-year-old Ryan tells us it's passion, strength, fear, excitement, and confusion. 40-something Christy says softly, love is knowing what the other person wants without even asking. Some of my favorite definitions of love come from children. When asked what does love mean, 8-year-old Rebecca said, "When my grandmother got arthritis, she couldn't bend over and paint her toenails anymore, so my grandfather does it for her all the time. Even when his hands got arthritis too, that's love." The reason it's so hard to define love is because love isn't a thing you have or get like a big feather bed. Love is a process. It's something you do or that happens to you, and it's the emotions and physical stirrings that go along with that. The actual process of falling in love unfolds with a natural progression through 4 stages: attraction, connection, intimacy, and commitment. The first stage is mainly about physical attraction and is triggered by non-verbal signals we give through a combination of attitude, physique, and clothing, our overall appearance. The next 3 stages are mainly about mental or emotional attraction, about developing intimacy and sharing confidences. And guess what? More often than not, it all begins with a look and a smile. The first step in creating any new relationship is attraction. Without attraction, nothing happens. We humans spend our lives sizing each other up, especially when meeting strangers. It's in our nature to do so. We make snap judgments about people. Is this person a friend or an enemy, an opportunity or a threat, attractive or repellent? If 2 people meet and are mutually attracted, great. The way is paved for the second step towards love, connecting. Send the wrong signals or use the wrong words, and the whole thing can fall apart as fast as it began, even if the potential is there. Send the right signals, say the right things, and the connection is easy and comfortable. Then it's time to move on to the next step, to create some kind of intimacy. This is where you get the person talking and keep them talking. There are two types of intimacy, emotional and sexual. This book is primarily concerned with emotional intimacy. Other than teaching you some sexually charged flirting techniques, we'll leave your sex life to you. Emotional intimacy is achieved through both nonverbal signals, such as prolonged eye contact and incidental touching, and through a style of conversation called self-disclosure, in which you share your true self with another. As you both reveal more, you'll identify small but crucial aspects of yourself in each other, discoveries that will lead to feelings of unity and oneness. From here, the shift into commitment with your matched opposite is as natural as self-preservation itself. Why is having someone special so important to us human beings? Not just for companionship, for safety, or for convenience, but because we have a need to express ourselves emotionally and intellectually. We all need someone we can trust to talk to, share our experiences, and bounce our ideas off. We want someone with whom we can share life's pleasures and, most importantly, someone to give us feedback, to respond to what we say and let us know how we're doing. We need someone to witness us, to validate us, and make us feel complete. So, why is it sometimes so hard to find? For starters, much of what Hollywood has been feeding us about the perfect partner is perfect baloney. The media in general have given us poor guidance when it comes to finding a person who can complete us. If you look at glossy magazines or watch TV or movies, it's easy to believe that we ought to look a certain way, smell a certain way, talk about certain things, and aspire to certain narrow financial and career objectives if we want to be in the running for a mate. In an attempt to meet the media's ideals, we've been hoodwinked into wearing masks and falling for others who are also wearing masks. Is it any wonder, then, that when the masks come off and we see what's behind them, we end up with a lot of incompatibility, frustration, and anger? And is it any wonder that our divorce rate is now over 50%? I'm not suggesting for a minute that you let yourself go. Quite the contrary. Make the most of what you've been given. I just want you to realize that there's nothing wrong with you if you don't look like the folks on TV and in the magazines. Be yourself, maximize what you've got, and get rid of the masks. If not, you might just find you'll be hiding what you really have to offer. We've also been conditioned to believe our prince or princess will just waltz into our lives. But most of the time it doesn't work that way. Sure, love at first sight happens, but it's not wise to count on it. You have to get yourself out there, talk to people, explore opportunities, make connections. Love by design is a series of steps that helps you connect with your matched opposite. It's not cold or calculating, and it's not settling for second best. Rather, it's understanding the process of falling in love with the right person and taking deliberate steps to make it happen. You'll begin by evaluating your self-talk inner monologue and looking at the kind of person you think you are. Then you'll look at your personality traits. Once you have a greater understanding of yourself, you can work out what kind of person you're most likely to successfully love and be loved by. When you know what you're looking for, you can fine-tune your self-presentation so you make a fabulous first impression. You can optimize your rapport skills to accelerate your ability to connect with someone and find common ground. From there, you can glide rapidly into intimacy by self-disclosure, sharing the kind of confidential information that creates bonds between people. I'll teach you how to manage the timing, risk, and excitement in all of this so you can move through the steps as effectively as possible. Take a few minutes to consider the following questions about how you see yourself, how you think others see you, and what personal qualities you consider important in others. 1. What 5 or 6 words would you use to describe yourself? 2. What 5 or 6 words do you think others would use to describe you? 3. Are the words similar? If not, why do you think there's a difference? 4. With the exception of commenting on your looks, what is the best compliment someone could give you? And 5. What do you believe are the 3 most important qualities for a friend to have? A business partner? A romantic partner? We've all heard the old saying, there's someone out there for everyone, and it's true. I don't care who you are, how you think, or how you look, your matched opposite is out there, waiting, looking, and longing to touch, cherish, admire, love, and complete you. You just have to find him or her, and we'll be getting to that later. You know that old saying about 2 people making beautiful music together? It may be corny, but it's an apt metaphor. Think of the skills I'm going to share with you as the scales you must practice in order to be able to create the ultimate Grammy-worthy, platinum-selling, Celine Dion eat-your-heart-out killer love song of all time. Chapter 2. Who will complete you? Imagine you had to spend the rest of your life in a rowboat. It's a wide boat, so you need to row side by side with someone else to keep the boat going forward. You'd need to agree on a direction, row at the same rhythm and speed, and be content to stay on your side of the boat. Otherwise, you'd go round in circles until you went nuts. Given all this, no doubt you'd be very selective about whom you choose for a partner. That boat is a loving relationship, and not just anyone will do to help you row it. For starters, you need to find someone headed the same way as you are, someone whom you can get along with, and who at the same time can fill you with enthusiasm when the effort of making the journey seems too hard. There'll be plenty of give and take, plenty of times when you have to keep each other amused, endure some moaning and groaning, cheer each other up, calm each other down, keep each other safe, weather a storm, and bask in the sunshine. With so much riding on your choice, you'll probably have to consider a few partners before you find the right one. You're going to grow together as you row together, matching each other stroke for stroke, more or less, but from opposite sides of the boat. The partner you choose should be able to make the trip interesting, opening your eyes to new thoughts, ideas, and horizons as you go along. You need to find someone who understands you and complements you, someone who's like you in some ways but different in others. Find your matched opposite and make him or her fall in love with you. When we hear people in strong, fun-filled, productive and lasting relationships say things like, "She makes me feel whole," or "We just feel right for each other," they're all getting at the same thing. Both partners bring to the relationships qualities the other lacks, and together they feel like more than the sum of the parts. These couples are telling us that they are complementary psychological opposites, and it's this oppositeness that's critical to the success of the relationship. Most friendships are based on the fact that we like people who are like us. Birds of a feather flock together. Obviously, our friends aren't our clones, but at core, usually we do share quite a lot in common, whether it's values, hobbies, traditions, political beliefs, cultural backgrounds, or what have you. That same element of commonality is a requirement in romantic relationships. You see it all around you. Intellectuals choose intellectuals, outdoor types favor outdoor types, the rich and famous hobnob with their own kind, and on and on. We find comfort in familiarity. The more you have in common with someone, the more comfortable and trusting you tend to feel. In the long term, it's far easier to coexist harmoniously with someone who's in sync with you on the issues and with whom you share beliefs and goals regarding money, achievement, child-rearing, and the like. Familiarity and friendship aren't enough to sustain a romantic relationship, though. It takes something more, a whole extra dimension, one that leads to expansion, growth, and vibrancy. That's where the opposites come in. Psychological opposites balance each other. For example, if you're an impulsive, assertive type, you may do best with someone who's more measured, but who in turn is energized by your get up and go. If you're an intuitive, emotional person, you might feel complimented by someone whose feet are firmly grounded, and he or she might be glad to have a share in your creative energy. All our lives, we've heard that opposites attract, but do they really? The short answer is occasionally. Sometimes we might find ourselves attracted to someone who seems nothing like us. They may be far younger or older, more free-spirited or responsible, but chances are it won't be long before one or both of you decides to jump ship, leaving the other to row in circles again. Often these relationships take place at a time of transition in our lives, a time when, for whatever reason, we may want to break out of our old patterns. For a while, we might find delight in the contrast. As the relationship develops, though, we often begin to see our mates' differences as flaws that need fixing and try to mold them into who we think they should be, which is usually someone more like us. Let's take a look at how it worked in one real-life situation. Alan is a bright, good-looking human resources VP in his early 30s, whom I met at one of my workshops. He dated a string of stylish, good-looking women with great careers. But even though he was always enthusiastic at the start, the relationship seemed to fizzle out after a few months. Then Alan met Sarah. Sarah is pretty enough, Alan's friends noted, but not like the knockouts he usually dated. Her job isn't particularly glamorous or high-powered either. And yet, Alan said, Sarah made me feel special from the first time I met her. Her car broke down ahead of me at a busy intersection, and I got out to help her. She was really appreciative, he laughed. My other girlfriends would probably have told me to mind my own business, that they could deal with it themselves. Alan soon learned that no matter what he and Sarah were doing together, she made him feel energized and in charge in a subtle way, which was something he hadn't felt with the other women he'd dated. What was it about Sarah that makes her different from the rest, I asked him. He replied immediately, she makes me feel motivated, like I can take on the world and win. She's smart, she's thoughtful. And then he paused for a moment. And she's classy. I got to meet Sarah a month or so later. You two really hit it off, I said. So far, it's looking good. How come? I chuckled. I think Alan's amazing. He's loads of things going, yet he always has the time for fun, for living life, like with this boat and his sailing. Is that what attracted you? Well, I love that about him, but it wasn't the first thing, actually. The day I met him, after he helped me with my car, I insisted on buying him a coffee to thank him, and we ended up talking for over an hour about politics of all things, because there was an election going on at the time. And he really listened thoughtfully to what I had to say, and asked good questions. And yeah, he was good-looking and funny and all that, so you may not believe this, but I felt he took me seriously in a way other boyfriends hadn't, and that's what made me start to fall for him. Alan fulfilled a certain need in Sarah. He made her feel bright, right, savvy, and whole. And for her part, Sarah made Alan feel motivated, alert, and strong. They were the answer to each other's questions. When most of us are asked what we're looking for in a potential mate, we usually describe some of their attributes, someone with a great sense of humor, or the classic tall, dark, and handsome. But we'd be better off if we focused not on the person we're looking for, but on ourselves, and in particular, on the way that ideal person would make us feel. To figure out what it would take to make you feel complete, answer these two simple questions. 1. Do you consider yourself to be a more rational or a more emotional person? And 2. Would you describe yourself as socially outgoing or socially reserved? Sarah answered rational and socially reserved to these questions, while Alan answered rational and socially outgoing. Peas in a pod on one side, they're opposites on another. Matched opposites. For centuries, thinkers have broken personalities down into 4 main types. Here are the personality traits for the 4 types of people. Analyst, controller, supporter, and promoter. Listen and determine which attributes best match your personality. There are no right or wrong answers, so just use your instincts. There may be 1 or 2 things that don't apply. Not everything will be a perfect fit. And remember, this is what you think about yourself, not what other people think about you. Just be honest. First, the analyst. This person is a perfectionist, neat and organized, detail-oriented, conscientious and correct, systematic, accurate, strives for perfection, tactful, likes to plan ahead and prepare well, is sensitive to criticism and abhors making errors, follows directions precisely, likes facts and logic, is intolerant of carelessness and disorder, does not like overly aggressive people, and dislikes unpredictability. He or she responds well to being right and reacts badly to being wrong. The analyst is more rational and emotional, and socially more reserved. The analyst's key feeling is intelligent. Next is the controller. This person is enterprising, quick and decisive, direct, self-assured, seizes challenges and takes action, likes power and prestige, is restless, can be impulsive, is fearless in confrontation, is an impatient listener who interrupts frequently, has high ego, is strong-willed and strong-minded, may lack empathy, can be argumentative and a bully, and dislikes indecision. The controller responds well to getting results and reacts badly to losing control. The controller is more rational and emotional and socially more outgoing. The controller's key feeling is powerful. Third, the supporter. This person is reliable, a good listener, steady, sympathetic and cooperative, enjoys working behind the scenes, is friendly, loyal, sincere and supportive, feels deeply, but usually holds in emotions, is modest, unassuming and patient, is dependable and responsible, seems easygoing, but can be stubborn, cares deeply about family and friends, does not like sudden changes, is very giving, but if crossed can be unforgiving, is honest and reliable, and dislikes insensitivity. The supporter is more emotional than rational and socially more reserved. The supporter responds well to acceptance and reacts badly to rejection. The supporter's key feeling is valued. The fourth personality type is the promoter. This person is enthusiastic, persuasive, optimistic and entertaining, very spontaneous and friendly, loves to share ideas, an outgoing people person, has a high degree of ego, an expressive talker, enjoys recognition and prestige, dislikes writing reports and filling in forms, can be disorganized, prefers face-to-face contact, is impatient, is flexible, and dislikes routine. The promoter responds well to admiration and reacts badly to disapproval. The promoter is more emotional than rational and socially more outgoing. The promoter's key feeling is important. In general terms, each personality type has a key feeling that needs to be validated. Analysts need to feel intelligent, controllers like to feel powerful, supporters like to feel valued, and promoters do best when they feel important. In talking with people in long-term, vibrant relationships about how their matched opposite completes them, it was these feelings that came up again and again. I feel like I'm the cleverest guy in the world when I'm with her, an analyst would say. A controller might say he makes me feel strong. A supporter would tell me she makes me feel needed, and a promoter would say she makes me feel really important. What's more, when asked about previous relationships that hadn't worked out, people readily saw the lack of these key feelings as a cause. Put these findings to the test. Let's say you are a promoter and are supposed to feel most alive with someone who makes you feel important. Look back over your life and relationships with other people, and not just the people you've been involved with romantically, but also friends, co-workers, etc. Were the people with whom you felt at your best also the ones who made you feel important? Given that they're matched in the ways that are important to them, interests, values, religion, etc., people with different personality traits have a better chance of forming a lasting bond than people who have the same ones. Imagine two power seekers rowing the same boat, both jockeying for the dominant position, both wanting to set the course, pace, and rhythm. Imagine how far two important seekers will get as they vie for attention, or how about two intelligent seekers setting off on their cruise, criticizing each other's decisions and putting each other down so they'll feel smarter? Or how about two value seekers looking to each other for support and just rowing along, preferring to agree to anything the other says and procrastinate rather than rock the boat? Better to pair a promoter with an analyst and have a fun-filled and well-planned trip, with one partner willingly embracing the other's need to feel smart, or pair a controller with a supporter and have a confident captain and a willing crew, or a supporter with a promoter and have a floating fun palace. You get the idea. 1 + 1 still equals 2, but when those two are matched opposites, the possibilities seem infinite. Let's look at an example. I've known Michael since he was 14 years old. Today he is CEO of a textile company with more than 450 employees. Michael and I were having lunch one day when his good friend Brian dropped by our table to say hello. During the course of the conversation, I learned that Brian is happily married to Virginia, Michael's ex-wife. What's more, Brian and Virginia have custody of Michael's children. Michael has been happily remarried for 12 years to a woman called Kim. The two guys have a terrific attitude about the situation and were both happy to discuss it with me. I began by asking them how they felt about the statement, "We don't fall in love with other people, we fall in love with the feelings we get when we're with them." They both agreed it made sense. Then I asked Michael to complete this sentence. "More than anything, Kim makes me feel." "Oh, that's easy," he replied. "Unstoppable." I asked him, "Did Virginia ever make you feel unstoppable?" He chuckled, "No way." I asked Brian to answer the same question regarding Virginia. It didn't take him long to say, but the word that comes to mind is sensible. I followed up by asking Michael if Virginia ever made him feel sensible. Actually, she made me feel a bit insecure, if you must know. Both Michael and Brian did self-assessments. Michael's a controller. Brian's an analyst. Later on, Virginia and Kim conducted their own assessments. Virginia is a controller. Kim is a supporter. All four of these people are matched socially, culturally, intellectually, and even physically, but Virginia and Michael's marriage hadn't worked out because they're both controllers. Virginia's second marriage to Brian and Michael's to Kim are successful because they've both found their complementary psychological opposites. Many relationships begin solely as a result of exterior perceptions. We see someone who looks good to us and we try to build it from there. But as in any other kind of construction, you need a solid, balanced foundation to make it last. To find the type of person who will complete you, look for someone who is a different personality type from yours, who matches you in many ways, values, outlooks, goals, sense of humor, decency, morality, but who will complement your temperament and will validate your emotional needs. Seek out your matched opposite, or be prepared for the rest of your life to know you'll only feel half of what you could have felt. Love is about mutual enthusiasm. Things just click when you're with the right person, and they double-click when it's happening for both of you. In the end, the goal is to free you from trying to make things work, from trying to shoehorn yourself into incompatible relationships, and to find a match who completes you as much as you complete him or her. Good relationships come easily. Start to notice what kind of people you're most comfortable with. I can't tell you how many times people have said, "What I like about so-and-so is that I don't have to work at it." It's a terrific clue to a good relationship. Chapter 3. Getting Out There. Already I can hear you thinking, "Okay, fine, I understand the theory, but how do I find this person who completes me and whom I complete? Even if I knew exactly what I wanted, it's not as though I can order them from a catalogue." True enough. There's no shortcut to locating your soulmate. I can help you make your matched opposite fall in love with you quickly, but you have to meet him or her before the magic can work. You've got to get out there. Love is a numbers game. The more people you meet, the more chance you have of finding one who's right for you in the long term. If getting out there doesn't come easily to you, or if what you've been doing hasn't brought the results you want, perhaps it's time to create a social action plan that will bring more activity, variety, and new people into your life. So, over the next few weeks, I want you to focus on improving your social skills and cultivating friendships both new and old. The best way to begin to meet new people is through the people you already know, your friends, family, and colleagues. I realize this is not earth-shattering knowledge, but sometimes the obvious bears repeating. Starting close to home ups your chances of meeting people who share your social values. Let your friends know you want to meet new people. Sure, you think they already know, but have you told them outright? If not, make sure you do. This is a time in your life to make socializing a priority. Turn it into a habit and get good at it. Agree to set aside just one day a week for the next year to get involved with people you already know, those you only know vaguely, and some you haven't yet met. Ask an acquaintance out for a coffee or entertain friends at home. Join a community club or a volunteer organization. Invite friends to a sporting event, a park, a museum, a concert, a festival, and suggest they bring friends too. Like this, the number of people you know will increase dramatically, along with your pool of potential partners. You'll probably even have fun while you're at it. Make some plans right now and then follow through with them. You'll be surprised at the results. Here's an example. George lost his wife Nancy to illness when he was 55. They'd been best friends, and although they'd had a few other close friends, they'd spent much of their time together. As the months went by after Nancy's passing, George became quite lonely. Then he attended one of my talks and heard me talk about my 2 simple rules for meeting new people. Entertain once a week without fail, and accept all reasonable invitations. George contacted me and told me this story. The same night I heard you talk, I bumped into a young woman I'd met a couple of times. Her name's Michelle. She's the daughter of one of Nancy's friends. She inquired how I was doing, then told me she was helping to put on a weekend jazz festival, and asked if I'd like to attend. She told me if I turned up, she and her husband would look out for me. I thanked her. I was truly moved, but no way I was going to go. Then, on the way home, I started thinking about what you'd said, and the first thing that came into my head was the bit about entertaining and accepting all reasonable invitations. Why not, I thought. I just got an invitation. That's when it began. Over the next few days, George called a couple of friends and invited them to join him, and that weekend they all met up and went to the festival. I actually enjoyed myself. We bumped into Michelle and her husband Rick. It was a warm night and the music was pretty good, and heck, there's a world out there. George made up his mind to entertain once a week no matter what. At first inviting friends, family and colleagues and encouraging them to bring a friend or two. The more the merrier. At first, he was a bit concerned because he was a truly terrible cook. But as he told me later, this turned out to be the best thing he had going for him. Word got out, he laughed. So when I'd invite people over for dinner, they'd ask if they could help, which meant the party started in my kitchen and just got better from there. Or people would ask me to come over to their place instead, so I'd end up meeting all their friends. George stuck to the advice he'd heard at my lecture, both parts. A little more than 2 years after Nancy had passed away, George remarried. I definitely never set out with this in mind, he stressed. It's just that I got to know so many people that my whole life changed. So there you have it. 2 simple rules. 1. Arrange dinner or an outing once a week and encourage your guests to bring new people. 2. Accept all reasonable invitations. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Hey, I'm having some friends over for potluck on Friday night. Why don't you come and bring a friend? I want to meet new people. Or, there's a gang of us going to the movies on Tuesday. Want to come along? And feel free to bring a friend. I want to meet new people. There's the key phrase. I want to meet new people. If you don't naturally meet a lot of new people and you feel you've tapped your friends enough, find other ways to get involved. The more activities you participate in and the more places you visit, the sooner you'll get to meet the person who's out there searching for you. Take courses, volunteer, join a committee, go to exhibitions, walk someone's dog, learn to cook, take flamenco lessons, take pottery lessons, learn German, visit art galleries, go to pet shows, take up roller skating, attend weddings and christenings, funerals and other events. Not only will these activities make you a more interesting, vital person, but they'll also enlarge your circle of acquaintances. I've heard about many happy couples who met online. And there's the crux of the matter. They met online. Then they met in the real world, and then they fell in love. The internet was a tool they used for meeting people, just as getting an introduction from a friend, joining a club, or taking classes is a tool. It helped facilitate their meeting in person, where they could truly learn about each other face to face. No matter how finely tuned the selection process and how optimistic the players, it still comes down to those first 90 seconds when you meet for the first time and make your initial impressions, and those first 90 minutes when you start to really learn about each other. More than 50 million people log on to internet dating sites every month, but the one thing I don't want you to do is sign up for a service instead of exploring other methods. Rather, think of the internet as one slice of a larger socialization pie, not as a substitute for getting out there among people, but as one of the many ways you can use to expand your circle of acquaintances, get together with them in a social setting, and eventually find your matched opposite. Try this exercise. It's called My Socializing Action Plan. Take a moment to consider your favorite types of social activities. Theater, dancing, sporting events, hiking, team sports, outdoor festivals. Choose one activity to create a social event around. Decide whom to invite and when and where you'll have the event. Pick a day to invite everyone and be sure to ask them to bring friends. Now photocopy your socializing action plan and stick copies on your bathroom mirror and on your refrigerator door. I know, I hear some of you protesting already. I have no time, I'm not gregarious, I need to be pushed. There's no one out there. What you're really saying is, I'm better at dreaming up excuses than I am at getting on with it. You'll have to overcome your own mental obstacles. And here's how to do it, step by step. They say that most people's biggest fear is public speaking, and that this fear holds millions of people back from advancement in their careers. But if you ask people who've gotten past this fear for their secret, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you all it took was practice. The same applies to connecting with fresh faces in your private life. Start small and safe and grow from there. Take the initiative and begin with your close friends, family, or even colleagues at work. Ask them to introduce you to someone new. It doesn't have to be a potential mate, just someone who'll lead you towards meeting more new people. One way to meet people in a relaxed atmosphere is to take a course where people interact naturally. Choose a class where you participate rather than sit back and listen to a lecturer. Something like cooking or wine tasting or learning a foreign language should do the trick. You can also get involved in your community as a volunteer, which is an especially good method if you're new in town. You have to make time. Sure, you work 10 hours a day and commute 45 minutes each way, but what do you want? Where are your priorities? Cheryl Richardson, author of Life Makeover, recommends scheduling breathing room every day so you can step back, reevaluate your priorities, and be sure that you're working on what really matters. If you're listening to this audiobook, one of your priorities is meeting someone to love. Don't ignore this important part of your life. Set aside at least 15 minutes a day to phone or email people and make plans. Call a friend on your cell phone on the way to lunch. Act on some aspect of your social action plan every single day, working towards your ultimate goal. If you find it difficult at first to balance your action plan with other obligations or priorities in your life, find ways to combine the two. If, for example, exercising is a high priority for you, ask friends to join you on your exercise routine. If you work long hours and aren't ready to scale back, try to have fun on your lunch break. If friends work nearby, meet them at a restaurant. If your weekends are filled with house or apartment projects, arrange home improvement parties with friends in similar situations, with the host responsible for feeding his or her guest workers. Time management solutions may not always be obvious, but if you're determined to find someone to love, it's absolutely imperative that you make time to meet new people. If you've just moved to a town and don't know anyone, consider yourself lucky. There are so many new people to meet. So much potential. Again, take the initiative and get involved. Look at listings in the local paper. Listen to the local radio. Talk to people in stores, or just drive around and look for places that seem interesting. Let me tell you a story about a young woman I know. A year ago, Laura was working as an event planner in Boston. Her life was a constant hustle, and it seemed like every guy she met was obsessed with his work and didn't have time for her. Laura decided to make a change. 28, she quit her job, gave up her one-room city apartment, and headed for the small village of Two Elms, which she'd visited a couple of times and fallen in love with. Laura was a private person by nature, but she consciously went out of her way to be friendly to everyone she met, greeting strangers with a smile and introducing herself to everyone behind the counter of the local shops. "Hi, I'm Laura," she'd say. "I just moved here." Her friendliness paid off. 1 month after she handed in the keys to her apartment in Boston, Laura began a part-time job at the Book Nook, a little bookstore squeezed between an upscale bakery and an antique shop. Laura found her new work life fun and easy compared to her life in Boston, and it gave her time to do other things. She joined the Theatre Restoration Committee, she wrote a book review for the Two Elms Times. By the end of her second month, she'd made a few friends and gotten to know several of the regular customers at both stores, including Christina, an Austrian woman about twice Laura's age, who raised horses in the hills north of the village. Laura also had her eye on a young man named Jason, who worked afternoons at the town pharmacy. As luck would have it, Christina tumbled into the Book Nook one Friday afternoon, just as Laura was closing up, while at exactly the same moment Jason crossed the road and disappeared into the antique shop next door. The perceptive horsewoman caught Laura watching Jason through the glass and couldn't resist grinning at her new friend. "So you like that young man, huh?" "Oh, well, he is attractive," Laura was blushing. "And what are you going to do about it?" asked Christina in her characteristically straightforward manner. I don't know," said Laura. "Nothing." "Come," she said, grabbing Laura by the arm. "Let's go to the pub and discuss." At the pub around the corner, Christina headed for the bar. "You find a table and I will get the drinks, okay?" Laura nodded and went off to find a table in the far corner of the pub. Christina joined her minutes later, carrying 2 sparkling pints, but she didn't put them down. Instead, she gestured to another empty table. "Over there, it's better." Laura grabbed her things and followed her friend to the table, which happened to be smack in the center of the room. "You want to meet new people?" Christina said. "Sure," Laura replied. Christina leaned towards her. "Then you must always sit in the middle. That is where the popular people sit. That way you get noticed. It's the same at horse shows. If you want the judges to notice you, you place your horse in the middle. It's psychological. Now this young man, tell me about him." "I can't," Laura answered. "I don't know anything but his name. I don't even know if he's available." "Don't worry, he is. His boss, Scotty, boards his horses at my place, and he never stopped talking." Christina took a swig of her lager. "Now, have you spoken to him?" "I had to ask him for advice at the pharmacy a few weeks ago when I had pink eye." Laura laughed, beginning to loosen up. "I look gorgeous." "If you have been here for 2 months, I think it's time you give a dinner party," pronounced Christina, slapping her hand on the table. "And you're going to invite Jason." "No, I can't." Laura put her glass down. Yes, you're going to find a way to talk to him, and here's what you're going to say. I'm having a dinner party to celebrate being here for 2 months, and I'm inviting a bunch of people. I would love for you to come. And here's what you call the kicker. Say, please feel free to bring a friend. Then pause and say, if you wish. But I can't just walk right up to him. Yes, you can. You see him, you count to 3, and on 3 you go up and speak. Just like going over a steeplechase jump. If you hesitate, you fail. If you think about it, you fail. You feel afraid and your horse can tell it will shy away or just refuse. Same with men and women. Count 1, 2, 3 and go. It's the 3-second rule. That way you're strong. You're not asking him out on a date, for heaven's sake. You're asking him to socialize. It's different and it's normal. Then you have him where you want him. Although the outcome of this story isn't the real point, of course you want to know what happened. Well, Laura followed Christina's advice and invited Jason to her party. They dated for a while, but they didn't fully click. Laura, however, eventually found her match opposite, Jason's cousin, who she might never have met if she hadn't followed Christina's plan, 3-second rule and all. The real point of this story is to show you that regardless of circumstance, you can always find ways to make connections. And you can benefit from Christina's great advice. She showed Laura how to engineer a meeting with the man she was interested in, without looking as if she were blatantly chasing him, something guys still don't handle very well. Should a woman ask a man out for a date? Conventional wisdom says no. It's the man's job to do the pursuing. Reality says sure, why not? And why not indeed? Because it works. I've met dozens and dozens and dozens of couples where the woman did the asking, and the result is a happy, balanced, long-term life together. So what's the best way to do it? Ask without asking. Use an indirect or soft question. Did you ever notice that if you say to someone, I wonder what time it is, they'll tell you the time, even though you didn't directly come right out and ask what time it was? Or if you say, I don't know what kind of movies you enjoy, they spill the beans and tell you. When you use a statement like this, especially with questioning body language, raised eyebrows or raised hands, and a questioning voice inflection, the person will willingly answer a question that was never even asked in the first place. This is a well-worn way for a woman to ask a man out on a date. Practice with this exercise. It's called getting involved. First, pick an activity that interests you. A sports club, taking music or dance classes, a book or poetry club, or volunteering. Next, name something you've always wanted to do or learn. Now, find out how to get involved in both of them and select a day on which you'll get involved. And now, go do it. One of the main reasons people are uncomfortable with dating and reaching out socially is the fear of rejection. But it's a mistake to look at it this way. As you search for your matched opposite, you're going to spend a fair bit of time dating. And because the search is a numbers game, you'll likely experience what you may choose to label as rejection, as well as doing some so-called rejecting yourself. This is most quickly apparent in online dating, where you might scroll through dozens of profiles before seeing any that catch your eye. And of course, the reverse applies too. There is no rejection, there is only selection. Rejection isn't personal. It's part of the natural selection process. You wouldn't walk into a furniture store and buy the first sofa you saw. Instead, you start shopping with some general ideas of what you want, then try out one after the other, till you find one that felt right. Most of the ones you'd rejected would be perfectly fine sofas that would be great in someone else's living room, just not yours. You go through the same process of selection when buying a car, a house, and just about anything else of importance to your life, so it's absurd to think you'd settle for the first man or woman that came along. Unless you're one of those extremely lucky souls who meet their matched opposites early, settling for someone you don't really click with would be downright foolish. The fact is, most people you meet won't be your matched opposite, but they may make great friends. Or, as in the story about Jason and Laura, they may introduce you to your matched opposite. Be open to people's charms, but also be aware that very few of them will be a really great match for you. Likewise, you're not going to be right for a lot of people. Remember, only you can make it happen. If you're not happy with the way things are going, you're the only one both with the authority and the responsibility to change them. You're in charge of your life. You say what gets done, and you reap the rewards. 1, 2, 3, no hesitation. This is the moment to take the initiative and get involved. Start slowly if that's your style, but make socializing a priority in your life. By the end of a month, you'll be an expert at mixing and mingling, and you'll wonder why the heck you didn't do this before. Part 2. Get set. Fine-tune your people skills so that when you meet your matched opposite, you're ready to connect. Chapter 4. A fabulous first impression. What makes a star a star? I don't just mean stars of stage or screen, but those people you see at a party or down at the garden centre who attract and hold your attention longer than the average person. The ones you look at and somehow you want to be with them. What is it that attracts you to them? Is it the way they dress? The way they stand and move? Or something ineffable they give off that creates this impression? We've all heard the phrase, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and it's true. People make judgments about you the moment they see you. And just because you haven't seen them, that doesn't mean they haven't noticed you. You don't have to be a star, but it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of star quality to help ensure that your first impression is working for you. That means you have to leave your house feeling good about yourself and the way you're dressed, and to stay that way while you're in public. Because what people respond to when they see you for the first time, before you even open your mouth, are your attitude and your clothes. Elisa, Dennis, and Naomi arrive at the same time to a gala fundraiser at Boston's Copley Plaza Hotel. As the three enter the ballroom, their body language speaks volumes, 3 different volumes. Elisa is obviously there to enjoy herself. She's smiling, looking around, and walking tall. She appears natural and happy. She looks like fun. She scans the crowd, spots a friend, and makes her way purposely towards her. Dennis, on the other hand, looks around skeptically like he'd rather be anywhere but here. He's got his hands in his pockets, and if you have to guess what he's thinking, it will probably be, what a load of bozos. How long before I can escape? Naomi enters with a forced smile on her face, but she stops a few steps into the room. Her shoulders have begun to droop, and she begins to psych herself down, and she looks like she's scanning the room for the closest corner to hide in. Notice I kept using the word looks. That's what first impressions are based on, looks. And notice how their attitudes are apparent too when they enter the room. Dozens of people have seen them already, but only one, Elisa, has turned heads and made a good impression. You can spot someone's attitude from half a block away, from the middle of a subway train, from the other side of a shop, or from the moment someone steps into the room. There are 2 distinct classes of attitudes, those that attract and those that repel. When you see someone who's happy, confident, and relaxed, you're likely to be attracted to him or her. These are appealing, high attitudes. The opposite is true for someone who seems arrogant, gloomy, tense, angry, or dejected. No one wants to hang out with gloomy or irritated people because sooner or later they sap all your energy. These people have bi attitudes. The key to opening yourself up socially is to leave your gloomy side alone and consciously choose to look on the bright side, the side that gives you unlimited access to opportunity. The good thing about attitude is you can adjust it whenever you want to and buzz yourself up to the top of your game. All it takes is practice. Think about a time when you felt great. Perhaps it was when you accomplished something important to you. Maybe you won a race or gave a great speech or scored a goal. Or it may simply have been a time when you were enjoying the company of friends or family, or the late afternoon light of a summer day, or when you just felt truly yourself. Whatever it was, relive it in your mind in as much detail as possible, and once it's so clear you could almost reach out and touch it, connect it in your mind with a trigger word so you can summon that feeling again at will. What comes first, your thoughts or your emotions? The thought-emotion question is like the chicken and egg conundrum. One doesn't really come first, they're intertwined, which means thoughts affect emotions. A whole area of psychotherapy called cognitive therapy is based on this simple principle and has been shown to be effective in dealing with depression, low self-esteem, eating disorders, and a host of other problems. So, change your thoughts, i.e. your attitudes, and you can change your feelings. Many people have grown up believing their attitude towards life is simply a response to what happens to them. If it's raining outside and they were counting on sun, their attitude is annoyance. If their breakfast's cold, their attitude is irritation. If a friend doesn't call when expected, their attitude is resentment, and so on. They believe they are simply reacting to what comes their way. But in fact, to a large degree, you can adopt a positive outlook. As we go through our days and take in what's going on around us, we talk to ourselves about what we see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. Not out loud or consciously, but it does go on anyway. Once you're aware of your self-talk, you can change the conversation. When you hear yourself saying something negative, refocus and find something positive. Turn "damn it, my shoes are getting wet" into "I love the sound of rain on the pavement." Without a useful attitude, you're not going to get very far in attracting your matched opposite, or anyone else for that matter. To achieve the results you want, you must think, walk, talk, and act in such a way that the best and most attractive parts of your personality come out. Is your best nature funny and warm, or sexy and confident, or relaxed and reassuring? Make sure people know it. But remember, your body and your mind are part of the same system, and you can't hope to control one without the other. Sure, you can tell your face to smile, but it won't come off genuine unless you first adopt a useful attitude to put you in the mood. Here's an exercise. It's called Getting in the Mood. Choose one of the following attitudes. It could be warm, or playful, or confident, or curious. Let's say you chose confident. Now, in your own time, close your eyes. This is not a good idea if you're driving. And think of a specific moment in time when you felt the most confident you ever have, totally in control, and knowing exactly what to do. I want you to relive what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, and maybe even smelled and tasted at that specific moment in as much detail as you can. Watch the scene unfold. Look around and see what's going on in detail. Listen to the different sounds. When you have the sights and sound in focus, step into the picture and relive the scene looking out through your own eyes. Instead of watching it, you're now in it. See what you see. Notice the foreground. Notice the middle ground. Notice the background. Notice the colors. Are they bright and strong? Somber? Make the colors bright and sharp and as colorful as you can at this specific moment in time when you felt confident. Now I want you to bring up the sounds in detail, in as much detail as you can. Notice where they come from. Notice what they are. Are they harsh? Are they soft? I want you to notice what you feel, the physical sensations, the temperature of the air, your clothing, your feet, what you were wearing. Explore and relive whatever external sensations you can. If there are smells and tastes, bring those in too. Make the picture as real as you can. That's right. That's right. Now bring your attention to your internal feelings. Focus on this feeling of confidence. That's right. Notice where you feel it. Maybe it's in your tummy, maybe your shoulders, your chest. Notice where you feel the feeling. Feel your posture. How are you standing? How's your head? Is it high? Now I want you to take ownership of all these feelings and pump them up. Make them bigger and stronger than they were. Notice the colors around you. Make them brighter and more intense. The sounds more sharp. You can hear them. Make them bigger and brighter. And the feelings. Now double them. That's right. That's right. And now double them again. Double them. And now as you're bursting with the image, when you're living it even more vividly than the first time around, yell the word great in your mind 3 times. Great! 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 And then again. Great! 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 And now a 3rd time. Great! 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 When you're ready, open your eyes and savor that feeling. Look around, savor the feeling. And when you're ready, just relax again. That's right. The exercise you've just done is a powerful one, but it's also very simple. You just relived in detail a specific moment in time when you felt a certain way, when you felt good. And now, with very little effort, you can bring it whooshing back into the front of your mind and your feelings anytime you like. Now we're going to do it one more time. So before you close your eyes and do the exercise again in your own time, I want you to remember the 4 simple stages. Close your eyes and think of a specific time when you felt a specific way. For most of you, it would have been confident. Secondly, step into that picture, see it, hear it, feel it externally, internally, smell it and taste it. Then number 3, pump up the sensations. Pump up the sensations. The pictures are brighter. The sounds are more clear. The feelings are more intense. You can feel where they go. And then 4, yell the word great 3 times in your mind. Now, let's determine what attitude or combination of attitudes you would like to exude when you meet someone new. Finish the following sentence. The me that I'd like everyone to see is... The right attitude or combination of attitudes for me is... To think, walk, talk, act, and conduct myself according to my selected attitude, I will use the following trigger memory. Research shows that the single most important attribute we all subconsciously seek in a potential mate is good health. This goes back to our earliest ancestors and the desire to be fruitful and multiply. Females wanted clever hunters and strong protectors. Males wanted mates able to bear healthy children. A good way to determine health is by posture. Someone who's standing tall looks healthy and strong, ready to face the world. Your posture signals volumes about your physical and emotional health and vitality, and it does it in a flash. Stand tall and you'll feel emotionally tall. Send the crown of your head to the sky, move your shoulder blades down and slightly back, and you'll feel on top of your game. Just as thoughts and emotions influence each other, so do body and mind. If you feel sad, chances are you'll be sitting or standing slumped, with your head bowed and your mouth turned down. If you feel happy, you'll be walking tall, head up and smiling. But the reverse is also true. Physical attitudes influence moods. You can't feel happy while you sit in that slump with your mouth curled downwards. Try it, it's true. And you can't feel sad while you leap in the air with a big grin on your face. Your body just won't allow it. When you adjust your posture to upright and proud, your body will generate feelings of self-confidence, courage and, hey, even sexiness. So let good posture enhance your desirability. If you want to move on to some advanced poise and posture work, take dance lessons. Dancing benefits you in myriad ways. You gain strength, grace, and rhythm. It works wonders for your posture and gets you in touch with your body, and it helps boost your confidence on the dance floor and off. And what's more, you get to meet new people. So, you've got a great, useful attitude, you're standing tall, you're just about ready now to go out and find your soulmate, right? There's only one thing we have to check before you head out the door. Just what is that you are wearing? If the first thing someone notices about you is your attitude, the second is your clothes. In fact, the impact is made so quickly, it's as if they see both things at the same time, and then form their first impressions about you. Your clothing speaks volumes. It tells people what kind of person you see yourself as. It can also reveal a lot about your socio-economic status, whether you're conventional or flamboyant, sexy, modest, trendy, or traditional. Take a good hard look at your wardrobe and see if it makes the statement you want. Get into the habit of looking your best when you go out. I'm not talking about always being perfectly coiffed and made up or wearing your fanciest studs. Rather, I mean you should dress so you feel attractive, so that if you ran into an old friend you hadn't seen for years, you'd feel that you looked fine. We're making first impressions all the time, and you never know whom you might meet. Clothes are far too personal an issue for me to give specific advice that would work for everyone. Instead, here are 7 key points based on what I learned in my years in the fashion industry that will help you make your clothes work for you. None of this is new, it's tried and true, and it works. Number 1, wear clothes that fit. Number 2, accessories make a big difference. Number 3, make sure your clothes aren't out of date. Number 4, be well coordinated. 5, dress for the occasion. 6, make sure your clothes are clean. That means your shoes too. And 7, pay attention to your grooming. If you think your image or style, or lack of one, could do with a boost, then start keeping an active eye out for looks that might work for you. Begin by noticing what the people around you are wearing, paying particular attention to those whose style appeals to you. Take a look at catalogs and fashion magazines, do some window shopping, and browse clothing store racks. Start to notice which people on the street catch your eye. How are they dressed? Choose clothes you feel comfortable in, but also that really flatter you and project the image of your best self. Some of us dress to blend in, and while that's okay, you can also add a little flair that expresses your personality and makes you feel adventurous. Sometimes an interesting accessory can add a little oomph and also be a conversation starter. For example, my wife wears hand-painted reading glasses, and people are always asking her about them. If you don't have a strong image of yourself and you feel you need help, hire a consultant or go to a good store. You don't even have to buy anything. Try on stuff, get opinions, lots of them. Many high-end department stores provide in-house personal shoppers gratis. These people are there to help you find the right look. Be sure to brief them well, giving them a sense of what type of person you are. The Wall Street look may make you look dynamic in the mirror, but if you're a sheep farmer, it'll eventually backfire because it's not the real you. In the world of advertising, an impression is counted as a single exposure to a product. Advertisers pay fortunes to get their products out into the marketplace. Your irresistible first impression, your star power, is not going to be determined by TV commercials, glossy advertisements, or raving testimonials, but by your attitude, your poise, and your wardrobe. Enhancing and focusing on these important aspects of your image will do more than boost your chances in the love market. It'll also boost the way you feel about yourself. When we feel good about ourselves, it affects everything. We make better decisions, feel more adventurous, have more energy, and tap into our natural enthusiasm, all of which impacts on the non-verbal signals we send out to others. Being on top of our game means others will want to join in and play. Chapter 5. Using Body Language to Build Trust. Studies by the Harvard School of Health Sciences and several other notable institutions show that we decide within the first 2 seconds of meeting people whether we like them or not. We make unconscious appraisals of their non-verbal signals based on our emotional and physical security. I do, I don't feel safe with you. I do, I don't trust you. Those assessments lead us to make snap decisions about people, and they may be right, they may be wrong. If we like the person, we tend to see the best in them. If we don't like them, we may well see the worst. Also, if we like people, we look for opportunities to say yes to them. If we don't like them, we look for opportunities to say no. And since certain behaviors make people feel comfortable and others put them on guard, you actually have some measure of control over how people react to you in those first brief moments. Charming people look you in the eye when you first meet them. Alarming people avoid eye contact, or look at you so fleetingly they seem shifty or nervous. Charming people smile when they meet you. Alarming people have serious or worried mouths that set a disturbing tone. Charming people have open body language that says, you're welcome to approach. Alarming people have closed body language that says, scram, I got better things to do. Let me describe a scene that took place last winter at my local ski hill. Michelle worked at the local ski shop, and Brad, a frequent customer, was attracted to her and was pretty sure she was eyeing him too. He wanted to approach her, and he came up with the idea of signing up for an introductory snowboarding lesson. Let's look at his body language as it played out. Brad takes a seat across from Michelle at the sign-up desk. While Michelle is arranging her papers, Brad hugs his shoulders and nibbles his lip a little and runs his tongue around his bottom lip and looks down at the floor, occasionally sneaking glances at Michelle. Michelle gets herself organized and faces Brad squarely and openly, her elbows on the arms of her chair, her forearms resting lightly and uncrossed on the table in front of her. She looks him in the eye and smiles as she explains the snowboarding package, asking some questions and writing down the answers. Brad stops hugging himself and crosses his arms in front of his chest. His eyes dart around the room, rarely meeting Michelle's. As she continues explaining the deal, Brad places his right elbow on the table and turns so his body is angled to the left, away from Michelle. He looks at her sideways and frequently looks away. She instinctively turns her body in the same direction as Brad's, and in a very natural move puts her elbow on the table. They're almost mirror images of one another. Brad seems to relax and appears to pay more attention to Michelle. Now Michelle sits back in a chair and faces Brad. He does the same, but stuffs his right hand under his left armpit and covers his mouth with his left hand. Still, he's looking at her openly now and smiling a little. After a few moments, Michelle mirrors Brad's arm and hand positions, then suddenly leans forwards and says, in a clear, enthusiastic way, "So, the course starts next Saturday." She uncrosses her arms and rests them once again on the table. Brad does the same, smiles and asks, "So, after all these years of skiing, you think I'll be able to board?" They lock eyes and smile. "Sure," says Michelle, "and I think you'll have a really great time." There was a lot going on in this little scene. Brad started out alarming, using closed body language. Michelle was charming and used open body language, and eventually her openness disarmed, literally, Brad and enabled him to relax. Michelle employed the 3 main behaviors that are essential when meeting a potential partner, or for that matter, anyone with whom you want to have a productive, cooperative relationship. First, she looked him in the eye. Second, smile. And 3, she opened her body language, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But let's look at these behaviors individually. How do you feel when you go into a store or a bank and the clerk never so much as looks at you? Or when you meet someone new and they look right past you, over your shoulder? The answer is simple. You feel slighted and probably form a negative impression of that person. That's because when there's no eye contact, there's no trust and there's no respect. Eye contact says trust is in the air. Eye contact is intimate contact, and used properly can create immense rapport and a hint of sexual intimacy. The easiest way to learn to consistently make eye contact is to get into the habit of noticing the color of people's eyes when you meet them for the first time. The color itself doesn't matter, but it's just a device around which to build a new habit. Practice at the store, at work, the next time you go to a restaurant. Practice with everyone you meet until it's second nature. Remember, you were born to make eye contact. Babies make eye contact. Nothing says I'm noticing you quite the way eye contact does, and nothing says I'm happy and confident like a smile does. A smile signals to the other person unconsciously that this person is happy and confident. A smile is good news all round. I know it sounds basic, but make a habit of looking people in the eye and smiling. It builds bridges. You'll get better service, make better friends, feel better about yourself, and be more attractive to potential partners. Do you remember how you mentally yelled the word great 3 times in a row in the last chapter? Many models repeat the word great over and over to themselves with conviction when they need to put on a genuine-looking smile. Not all professional models have a good smile, but they use a trick. They use the word great under their breath. And it works. So next time you're going to meet someone, say great 3 times under your breath as you approach. By the time you get there, you'll not only be smiling, but you'll be feeling terrific. Open your body language. The simplest way to think about open and closed body language is that open body language exposes your heart. That is your chest area. It shows trust and says yes. Closed body language defends your heart. And as you saw with Brad, it can make you appear unfriendly, unhappy, angry, aloof. No matter what your real feelings are, it says no. Open body language unconsciously signals to the other person that this person is not a threat and they're not going to harm me. It's completely unconscious. If you want to show someone you're charming and not alarming, you have to open yourself up right off the bat, before you've even said a word. Presumably, the attitude you've chosen will do this for you anyway. High attitudes are open, just like Michelle's welcoming attitude. Open body language includes keeping your arms and legs uncrossed, facing the person with an easy physical attitude, maintaining good posture whether standing or sitting, leaning slightly forward towards the person, keeping your hands open, keeping your shoulders soft and relaxed, keeping your movements slow and relaxed, and maintaining a generally comfortable air about you. Open gestures are calm and deliberate. They're meant to be seen. When combined with open facial expressions like good eye contact and a smile, open body language signals trust, happiness, acceptance, and comfort, and sends the message that things are going well. You can enhance your open signals with your clothing. Imagine spending half an hour at a cafe having coffee with someone who never unbuttons their coat. An open coat or jacket, or removing the garment entirely, exposes the heart literally as well as symbolically. Positive, open body language and gestures reach out to others. They're the subconscious versions of a good hug or a heart-to-heart talk. But if open body language is like a warm hug, well, closed body language is like getting the cold shoulder. It's defensive and shuts people out. Closed gestures include avoiding eye contact, crossing your arms and or your legs, clenching your fists, turning your body at an angle to the other person, fidgeting, covering your mouth, moving stiffly or jerkily, and maintaining a generally uncomfortable air about yourself. Make a habit of opening your body language when you meet people. Stand and face them. Notice the color of their eyes. Smile, say great, and open your heart, expose your heart towards them. You'll be amazed how these simple gestures build trust. In face-to-face communication, the golden rule is small things make a big difference. Okay, all your nonverbal signals are in line. Your attitude is useful or great. You're dressed up so you feel and look good, and your body language is open. Now it's time to talk. By far the easiest way to meet someone new is to be introduced formally. Then all that's required for you is to stick out your hand and say, "Janet, it's a pleasure to meet you." A good introducer will often say something that will help launch a conversation, like, "Phyllis, meet Barry, my carpooling partner. Barry, meet Phyllis. Phyllis lives next door." This gives you a simple bit of information with which to start a conversation. It's a bit like kindling for a fire. Phyllis can now say to Barry something as simple as, "So, you work downtown," or as playful as, "You two drive together? Who gets to choose the radio station?" If Barry's the one to start the conversation, he can simply ask how long Phyllis has lived next door, or make a light-hearted jest about their host's skills as a neighbour. Let's take a closer look at another introduction to see how it works in more detail. Tom, a mutual friend, introduces Karen and Patrick to each other when they both happen to be in his real estate office early one morning. Tom's a sociable guy, and he knows how to make introductions, so the conversation starts flowing. "I don't know if you two have ever met," he says. "Karen, this is my friend Patrick. We play tennis together, and I usually let him win. Patrick, this is my old friend Karen. We bumped into each other over the weekend. It must be at least 5 years since you left town for the high life. Isn't that right?" "Yeah, about that," she replies. Then Karen turns to face Patrick, makes eye contact, smiles, and offers her hand. "Hello, Patrick. It's a pleasure to meet you." Patrick looks Karen in the eye, smiles, shakes her hand, not too firm, not too wimpy, and says, Well, what a great way to start the day." Karen grins. "Thank you. Are you this charming on the tennis court?" "Look," says Tom, "I just have to make a quick call. Why don't you two grab some coffee? It's freshly brewed, and I'll be right back." "A lot can happen in 5 years," Patrick remarks as they move towards the coffee pot. "Where did you escape to?" His tone is courteous, charming, and interested. He's been paying attention. "I hope you've been having fun." Most of the time. Being on call 12 hours a day and dealing with really grumpy people may not be everybody's idea of fun, but I love what I do. "Coffee?" Patrick asks. "Yes, please, black." "Let me guess. You're a doctor, and you've been working for the Peace Corps." "You're a funny guy," Karen's laughing and relaxed. "No, I'm not," she chuckles. "What about you? You're in real estate, I guess." Patrick shakes his head. "No, not at least in the way you're probably thinking. You're a tennis pro." You've heard the expression, "never look a gift horse in the mouth." In plain English, it means make the most of your opportunities. Karen and Patrick were lucky that Tom gave them something to work with when he introduced them, and they were both paying enough attention to use the information to banter back and forth and set a playful tone. They also used body language, facial expressions, laughter, feedback, and light-heartedness to fan the spark of an introduction into the flames of a conversation. Both Patrick and Karen were ready, willing, and able to make the most of their first few moments. Karen exhibited a you-never-know attitude and put her best foot forward, choosing an attractive, playful, and charming attitude, acknowledging the introduction, and making a great first impression. Patrick, too, did all the right things. He maintained Tom's upbeat and positive tone, then turned their first moments together into a game by riffing on the remarks about Karen's 5-year absence, introducing an air of mystery. Karen likewise picked up on the tennis clue. Patrick could have just laid all his cards on the table and said, "I have my own landscaping company, and I'm here because Tom's introducing me to a new client. What do you do?" And then Karen could have told him she's a helicopter pilot who's been flying the Frost Patrol up north and is here now to interview for City TV's traffic chopper job. Instead, they both chose play talk over small talk, and it made them appealing to each other. Suppose Tom hadn't paved the way for Patrick or Karen's conversation with his smooth social skills, or suppose the phone had rang and he'd had to take the call, leaving them only knowing each other's names. In this kind of situation, there are 3 types of starter that either of them could have used to ease quickly and gently into rapport. A statement. "Oh, this is such a bright, sunny office. I love the morning sun." A question. "How long have you and Tom been friends?" Or, "What brings you here so early in the morning?" Or a sincere, pleasant compliment, or a mixture of the 3. Compliments are the riskiest because they're personal, and it's easy for them to seem opportunistic or smarmy. They only work when they're truly sincere and not fabricated for the moment, and unless you're an expert at delivering them, you run the risk of getting too personal too soon. A statement followed by an open question is always a safe bet and a great way to start a conversation. You don't need to agonize over sparkling opening lines. They're just not worth it. The point of an opening line is to see if the other person is interested in talking to you. It's an invitation to start up a conversation. You can say almost anything, but the structure is important. It goes like this. Start with a statement. It could be about sports, the weather, the occasion, or the surroundings, and add a tag question. Isn't it? Don't they? Doesn't she? Bit chilly out tonight, isn't it? The person will recognize this as a conversation starter and respond, especially if you look away as you make your statement and look back at them as you add your tag question. The quality of the response will give you an idea of his or her willingness to continue. As a general rule, the longer and the more open the response, the better. Then, depending on the degree of response, follow up with your open question. How do you know Jack? Here's a tip. Use the person's name within the first couple of minutes of meeting him or her. It has a magical effect. After all, a person's name is probably the most important word in the world to them. But do it subtly. You don't want to come off as some flashy sales type. In the first couple of seconds after meeting you, people will make snap judgments about you. They'll read your attitude and decide whether you are charming or alarming. So be sure to make eye contact, smile, and open your body language to show the person you're open and safe. Practice handling introductions and making the most of those first few magic seconds, which can set the stage for your move from small talk to real conversation. There'll be more on that later, but first we're going to spend some time on those situations in which you have to introduce yourself. Chapter 6. The Approach. The setting in which you see someone can have a significant impact, both on how you perceive each other and how you choose to approach him or her. In the best of all possible worlds, there will be always someone available to make the introduction, and a familiar, emotionally comfortable space within which to interact, a party, a dinner, a club meeting, or a class, for instance. Researchers call these settings closed fields, where everyone has the opportunity to meet and the expectation that they'll do so. Meeting people this way, with an introduction from a mutual acquaintance and in a comfortable closed field, makes it more likely you'll share interests, values, and tastes, and also gives you an automatic conversational entree, even if it's as simple as, how do you know Bob, or how did you get involved with this club? But there are bound to be times, though, when you see someone you'd like to meet in a public, open field, like an airport, a shopping mall, a supermarket, or a commuter train. For most of us, this can be a daunting situation. So there are two ways to approach strangers to whom you're attracted, the direct approach and the indirect approach. So let's start with the direct approach. Many of us go through life hoping that others will somehow intuit our desires and fulfill them without our having to articulate anything. Sometimes we're even disappointed or feel rejected when people don't read our minds and provide what we want. The best way of getting what you want, though, is often just asking for it. Instead of simply noticing that cute guy or gal across the room and wishing he or she would notice you, now is the time to take action, to walk over and express your interest. For most of us, this is scary. But there are times when it's act now or never see the person again, as was the case with a man I met called Ryan. Ryan, a heavy equipment importer, was in Holland on business, riding on a half-empty train from Amsterdam to The Hague. Sitting across the aisle from him were two attractively dressed women in their late 30s, roughly Ryan's age. They were speaking English, and Ryan couldn't help overhearing their conversation. One of them, an American, mentioned she was a journalist based in The Hague, representing several overseas publications. The other, a young Indian woman, dressed like a Wall Street executive with a very correct English accent, spiced with a hint of Indian pronunciation, worked for a British shipping line. Ryan told me the beauty of the Indian woman's voice mesmerized him. He sensed without any shadow of doubt that she was his type. She talked slowly, he told me, choosing her words carefully and with precision. She was impeccably dressed, a little formal, totally classy. Ryan felt so strongly attracted to this woman, he decided to do something about it. Without giving himself time to talk himself out of it, using the 3-second rule, he slid to the aisle end of his seat and, using open body language, a smile, eye contact, and a calm, confident voice, he addressed the journalist. "Hi, excuse me." Then he turned to the other woman and, using a you and me gesture, pointing backwards and forwards, he said, "Hello, do you mind if I say something? Something personal?" I don't know, the woman replied. It's just that as we've been moving along in the train for the last half hour, and you were both lost in conversation, I couldn't help overhearing you. He paused to add tension. I just want to say, you have the most beautiful voice. Thank you, she said. I find it very attractive. Ryan paused for a response, but as he expected, none was forthcoming. I was wondering what you'd say if I invited you out for lunch, he said, nodding his head ever so slightly as if to say yes. I don't think so, but I'm very flattered, the woman replied. She seemed genuinely amused at Ryan's advance, but shook her head as she said no. I'll tell you what, Ryan said. Here's my business card. I'm going back to New York on Wednesday. Check out my website and you'll see I don't bite. Think about it, and when it's appropriate, give me a call. Or if you change your mind, or if you want to, you can email me tonight. Maybe we can pencil in lunch tomorrow. Your choice. Still looking her in the eye, he smiled, then turned to the journalist and said, thanks. He turned back to the woman with the enchanting voice, murmured bye, then got up and got off the train at his stop. Her name was Shantha. She called next morning and they met for lunch. She made me feel like I could conquer the world, Ryan told his friends later. He made me feel like the cleverest person he'd ever met, Shantha told her journalist friend when she called for all the details. Ryan and Shantha put an end to their long-distance relationship 18 months later when they got married and moved to the south of England. When Ryan introduced himself to Shantha, he used a technique hypnotherapists call pacing the ongoing reality. It's a great way to soften the impact of any approach, be it direct or indirect. In order to make you feel relaxed, a hypnotherapist will draw your attention to 3 verifiables or things that are obviously true. Then, while you're in an agreeing frame of mind, they'll throw in a suggestion in the hope that you'll agree with that too. First, Ryan mentioned 3 things to Shantha she had to agree with. They were in a train, yes. It had been moving along for at least half an hour, yes. And she had been lost in conversation, yes. All Ryan did was describe the situation, the ongoing reality, and Shantha had to agree, albeit subconsciously, with what he was saying. Delivered with sincere body language and voice tone, this kind of language is irresistible, subtly putting people in a more open and relaxed frame of mind by giving them undeniable truths about their immediate environment. You may have noticed that at one point Ryan also used something I call sleight of head. This involves using subtle body language to signal the answer you want to receive to a question, a yes or a no. Consciously or not, we respond very profoundly to visual signals. When Ryan asked if he could ask Shantha out, he nodded yes with the question, and although she initially turned him down, she may have already been having second thoughts. Soft questions like this will typically get you a response without directly asking for it. As we said earlier, if you ask someone a question like, do you know where the bus station is? He or she won't normally reply yes or no, but will go ahead and tell you the location. Ryan didn't actually come out and ask Shantha to have lunch with him. Instead, he embedded his question in a statement about his own curiosity. I was wondering what you'd say if I invited you out for lunch. Soft questions feel more natural than hard questions. They allow you to gently yet rapidly steer the conversation and appear more sensitive. In Shantha's case, she got the message and was flattered. Voiceover artists, the people who read advertising copy on TV and radio commercials, frequently use another technique called influential suggestions, also called hidden directives or embedded commands, to reinforce and direct the behavior of their audience. Persuasive communicators naturally do this all the time too. When Ryan said, think about it, and when it's appropriate, give me a call, or if you change your mind, or you want to, you can email me tonight, he was using influential suggestions. The secret is to mark the suggestion off from the rest of the sentence by changing your voice tone and body language slightly as you say them. Obviously, the way I just said them now was a little bit exaggerated. Ryan paused ever so slightly before he said, give me a call, and shifted his voice tone down an increment, so as to be slightly more commanding. He also looked Shantha in the eye and was physically still, allowing her to focus entirely on his words. Whether or not you choose to use the direct approach, these techniques are all useful both in attracting and connecting with the person you're interested in, and for communicating in general. Sure, it's scary, and it's probably not the way for most of us to go, But if you can pull it off, the direct approach certainly cuts to the chase and saves time. Now let's look at the indirect approach, what we call assuming rapport. Have you ever been at a gathering and had someone come up to you and say something relatively innocuous, and the next thing you know, you're both chatting like old friends? If so, you've had someone assume rapport with you. Assuming rapport is a subtle, less intrusive way to connect with the person you're interested in. It's less emotionally risky than the direct approach because it doesn't require any kind of introduction and outright request. You simply turn up, note something interesting that's going on at that moment, and begin your conversation in the middle. Chocolate-covered orange peel is just decadence itself. How do you think they ever came up with an idea like that? Or Turner's paintings have this amazing mystery to them. What do you think he was trying to say? One of the main advantages of assuming rapport is that you get to check someone out before deciding to make a move. An example. Henry sees an appealing woman having lunch up at the counter in a busy restaurant and sits down next to her. He picks up the menu, studies it for a moment, and then with all innocence and openness, as if it were an old friend or a cousin, he leans over and asks, "What do you recommend? I've never eaten here before." If her reply is a recommendation, it's terrific, and he takes it from there. If it's, "Neither have I," well, that's wonderful too. Either way, they have something in common. If you have assumed rapport and it's going well, there's chemistry on both sides. There's nothing to stop you asking for a date right there and then. All you need to say is, "I really enjoyed talking with you, and it would be great if we could get together again sometime." Then you wait for an answer. Say nothing. Let the soft question work its magic for you. The idea behind assuming rapport is that you don't use any particular opening line. You just start talking. The more you learn to include details about whatever's going on around you at the time, the more relaxed and natural you'll appear. This is supposed to feel like the opposite of a come-on or a pick-up. Casual is the key word. It's perfectly natural and friendly to exchange a few words with people in your daily comings and goings. So, how do you go about feeling casual, relaxed, and natural as you assume rapport? Simple. The key is to practice. Any of the following types of statements, questions, or compliments will do to get you started. 1. An open question. Any question that begins with who, what, why, where, when, or how, or begins with tell me about or what do you think about. These are questions that can't be answered by a simple yes or no. 2. An occasion or location statement which refers to what's going on around you as well as where you happen to be. For example, you might be at the market and you could say, "At last, fresh pineapple." 3. An occasion-location statement followed by an open question. "At last, fresh pineapple. How can you tell if it's ready to eat?" 4. A remark like, "Oh, wow, I got my watch set to the wrong date." 5. An observation. "Whoa, looks like our team's going to win tonight." 6. A sincere compliment. "I have to tell you, I really like your hat." 7. A request for an opinion. "I've never eaten here before. Is there anything you recommend?" When you spot someone you fancy, don't start making assumptions about how he or she will feel if you approach. You have no idea whether they'll be embarrassed, offended, or thrilled to bits, so just approach and see what reaction you get. You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain. The worst you can expect is a little dent in your ego. If you have to make assumptions, assume it will work. Assume that others will give you the benefit of the doubt and do the same with them. Assume they'll be influenced by your positive outlook and your attractive attitude. Most people are eager to connect and to be friends with us, so assume the best. That being said, it's also wise to remember that we're all more open and receptive to talking to strangers at some times than at others. Sometimes we just feel like keeping to ourselves. Maybe we've had a hard day or have something important on our minds or any of a million other reasons why we just want to be left alone. If you approach and sense any stiffening or annoyance or the person simply ignores you, that's okay. Just smile, excuse yourself, go about your business. You've been friendly, leave it at that. So remember, the longer you put something off, the harder it is to do. Did you ever miss out on an opportunity because you were too slow off the mark or talk yourself out of doing something and then regret it later? Or sat in a bar nursing a glass of wine or a beer all night, watching other people enjoy themselves while you never budge or make a move. "Oh, I'll just order one more drink, then I'll go for it. Next time she looks this way, I'll smile at her. Maybe that new guy that just walked in is more my type." Then you end up disappointed with yourself at the end of the night because you talk yourself out of doing something or you just plain chickened out. Remember the advice Christina, the horsewoman, gave Laura when she was new in town? Make your move within 3 seconds. Seize the moment and take action. So here's a little exercise for you to practice with the 3-second rule. Today, go out and assume rapport with 3 strangers. You can start small, so choose 3 people who aren't intimidating in any way. The goal is to simply say something to a stranger, not to start a conversation. You can say whatever you like, but statements are the easiest. Just some remark about the location or the occasion. Of course, you should adjust your attitude, open your body language, and be charming. This is a given for any encounter. But here's the important part of the exercise. You're going to make your way over to the person the moment you spot them. You are creating a new habit with 1, 2, 3 as your trigger. Practice, practice, practice. Just do it. The key point is that you'll get comfortable breaking the ice and taking action. The more you practice chatting with strangers, the easier it will become. To meet new people, you can use a direct approach like Ryan on the train. This is a great way to get things going. Or you can use the indirect approach and assume rapport. Assuming rapport has 3 advantages. It's non-committal, it allows you to learn a little about the person, and it enables you to make a face-saving exit should your encounter not bear fruit. After all, assuming rapport is first and foremost a casual approach, so a casual exit is perfectly okay. Casually turn up next to someone you're interested in, wait a respectful half-minute or so, then just start talking as if you're talking to your cousin or an old friend. Be sure to avoid giving the impression you're hitting on the person. Just be confident, interesting, and if possible, amusing. The key is to be as casual, relaxed, and confident as you can. If there's chemistry and you have a comfortable opportunity to ask for a date, fabulous. If there's no chemistry, move on. But if there does seem to be chemistry, but you're stymied after the initial approach, you may need to tune up your conversational skills. In the next section, we'll take a look at how to fan the sparks you've already kindled into a flame. Part 3. Go. Putting it all together. Moving from connection to intimacy to love in 90 minutes or less. Chapter 7. Conversation and chemistry. When you come face to face with someone, you're bombarded by sensory input. You can see, hear, feel, and smell the person. These are the elements for real chemistry, and when it's there, you just know it. Close your eyes and think of 3 people of either sex with whom you have chemistry. I'll bet conversation with these people is fairly effortless, right? Ditto when it comes to making someone fall in love with you. Conversation without chemistry won't lead you to long-term romance. Conversation with chemistry will. The greater the chemistry, the more effortlessly the conversation flows. Okay, you've made the initial contact. You've approached, or been introduced, or even flirted and said hi, and you've felt a little chemistry, or perhaps a lot. Enough to suggest that this could just be a matched opposite for you. Now, how are you going to keep it going? How are you going to move from introductory remarks to an engaging conversation? As you already know, questions are the spark plugs of conversation. Almost everybody likes to talk about themselves, and those who don't usually like to talk about what they know. So, if you ask good questions, you're halfway there. I say halfway because the other important component to good conversation is careful listening. Sometimes we're so involved in making sure that we hold up our end of the talk that we only half pay attention to what the other person is saying. Active listening, that is when you pay attention and really respond to the person with whom you're talking, is critical to a meaningful connection. It's amazing how people will blossom when you ask them a question about something for which they care deeply. But questions can also be seen as intrusive or nosy, so it's a good idea to start off gently with neutral questions. How do you know our host? Is this your first time here? How do you like it? What do you think about Jack's paintings? You don't want to start off by grilling people or digging into their personal lives. All you want to do is get the ball rolling. When they respond, pay attention to both their answers and their body language, which will give you clues as to their comfort level. If they make eye contact, appear relaxed, sit facing you and smile, it's likely they're comfortable with you. There are 2 kinds of questions, open and closed. Closed questions generally begin with some version of are you, have you, or did you. Think about it. If I say to you, are you a fan of George Clooney, all you really have to say is yes or no. Open questions, on the other hand, usually begin with who, what, why, where, when, or how, and require more than a one-word answer. They tend to get people to open up. For example, what do you think of George Clooney? Or what do you do for fun? However, the key is to pick up on something they say or something that's going on around you rather than ask a question out of left field. Wow, look at that enormous dog. And that woman walking him can't even weigh more than 100 pounds. How do you reckon she controls him? That kind of thing. Your questions don't even have to be very clever or well thought out. My personal favourites are something that begins with, tell me about such and such, or what do you think about such and such. These two phrases are really instructions for the other person to start talking, and they're almost foolproof. Part of paying attention is to listen out for pointers. Pointers are bits of information that lead you to possible avenues of conversation and also enable you to learn more about the person with whom you're speaking. Here's a little example. Jack literally bumps into Jill at a country fair and says, "I'm so sorry, are you okay? I'm looking for someone, so I wasn't watching where I was going." Jill, noticing that Jack is attractive, replies, "I'm fine. Do you need help finding anything?" Jack replies, "I have a friend in town. I promised to pick up some odds and ends and drop them off for auction. He left a note saying he was here, so here I am, but I can't find him." "There are food tents over there," she says, pointing behind Jack, "and the tractor pull is over there." Whoa. Jill literally missed the pointers. Jack offered her 2 tidbits of free information as he lobbed the conversational ball over the net, but instead of returning his serve, Jill did the conversational equivalent of putting her racket down and biting her fingernails. She should have said something like, "So there's an auction coming up. Do you know when?" Or, "Sounds like you're from out of town. How well do you know our little village?" Pointers are usually words you can pick up and repeat back to your conversational partner to steer and focus the conversation. Just choose the pointer that seems the most obvious, or the one that interests you the most, and let it take the conversation in that direction. Also, take a leaf out of Jack's book and drop a few nuggets of free information. It's important that you not only ask questions, but also volunteer some free information. That way people will get to know you, and you can learn a little about them too, without making them feel like they're being grilled. Connecting is a two-way arrangement in which the participants cooperate and encourage each other along. If you look interested and act interested, I assume you are interested. If you don't react or respond, I assume you're not interested in talking to me at all. Your behavior will then become a self-fulfilling prophecy. People who don't give feedback appear bored, boring, or baffling. So maximize how you listen and respond to others, using your whole face and body to show your interest. Start with your eyes and mouth, using them to register your feelings, surprise, delight, disgust, whatever. But don't stop there. Shrug your shoulders, throw your hands in the air, laugh, cry, respond. Lean forward in your seat, using your posture to show you're paying attention. Nod your head and encourage the other person verbally as well with interjections like, "No, you're kidding." He said, "What? That's amazing." And don't forget to use the power of silence. Give the other person time to think as well as talk. Do you know the feeling of satisfaction you get when someone really understands you, when you spill your guts about something that's dear to your heart and your listener says empathetically, "Wow, I feel that way too," or just, "Me too." That kind of me too empathy is one of the most powerful triggers you have to connect with others and cement the sense that you're sharing common ground. So in every one of your interactions, be it flirting at a bar or at a conference, assuming rapport at a party or the laundrette or out on a date, always be on the lookout for opportunities to honestly say, "Me too." Look out for me too moments. You're saying, "See, we're alike," and reinforcing the matched part of matched opposites. It also means you've found a good pointer to follow towards deeper conversation and connection. You're saying, "See, we're alike," and reinforcing the matched part of the matched opposites concept. It also means you've found a good pointer to follow towards deeper conversation and a better connection. Practice finding opportunities to say "me too." Simply pay attention to what's being said, and when the opportunity arises, jump in and say, as long as it's true, "I love hot dogs. Me too. I had to park miles away. Me too. I can dance the polka after a couple of beers. Me too." Of course, you don't keep saying "me too, me too, me too." You say versions of it. "Oh, really? Funny you should say that. I feel the same way," or "the same thing happened to me." But essentially, they are me too moments. By now, I've drummed into your head that occasion location statements, open questions, pointers, feedback, paying attention, and me too moments are the staples of conversation. But it's going to take something more to sail you smoothly into conversation and chemistry. There's one really powerful tool that we haven't yet mentioned that you can use to make someone feel comfortable, help the conversation flow, and give the chemistry a boost. It's called synchronizing, and arguably, it is the most powerful of all the rapport skills. Have you ever noticed that couples who feel comfortable in each other's company tend to speak and sit the same way? They lean, nod, readjust their position the same way, talk at the same speed, volume, and pitch, and use lots of the same words and phrases. What they're doing is synchronizing with each other. This is a process that produces and reinforces the kind of natural harmony and trust that's a prerequisite for emotional intimacy. Perhaps they both speak in quiet tones, leaning towards each other with their arms resting on the dining table, picking up each other's rhythms and nods and smiles, reflecting one another. If you think back to Michelle's interaction with Brad at the ski shop, what she was doing was synchronizing his body language. When Brad moved into a certain position, Michelle easily and naturally did the same. When we're feeling comfortable, most of us do this naturally. But Michelle wasn't only synchronizing with Brad, she was taking it a stage further and using her own body language to lead Brad into a more comfortable state. Synchronizing includes matching, which means doing the same thing as the other person. She moves her left hand, you move your left hand, and mirroring, which means you move as though you were watching the other person in a mirror. He moves his left hand, you move your right. You'll tend to use matching when you're sitting or walking next to someone, and mirroring when you're facing him or her. Synchronizing doesn't mean mimicking, however. This isn't a game of monkey see, monkey do. Your movements must be subtle and respectful. If your conversational partner is facing you across the table at a French bistro and leans onto her right elbow, you lean on your left elbow, mirror image. If you're both leaning against the rail on the ferry boat admiring the sunset, and she rests on her elbows and crosses her legs, you do the same, matching. These are the kinds of non-verbal signals you'll be relying on a great deal to accelerate feelings of comfort and closeness as you get emotionally intimate with your matched opposite. And please remember, this is natural. We've been doing this since the day we were born. 1-day-old babies cry when they hear other babies cry. By the time they've reached 1 year old, they're synchronizing their body language not only with the movements of the people around them, but also with the tone of voice. So it is natural. Maybe you're thinking, but won't other people notice I'm copying their behavior? Actually, they won't, unless the copy is blatant. If someone sticks a finger in his ear and you do the same, then yeah, he'll probably notice that. But when a person is focused on a conversation, he or she will not pick up on sensitive synchronizing. So-called socially gifted people synchronize with others all the time without thinking. So just do the minimum necessary to synchronize the overall body language of the other person, and you'll certainly feel it working. So you can synchronize any or all of the following, and the more the better, within reason. Body positions, overall body movement, head tilts, facial expressions, mental attitude, the tone, volume, and pitch of someone's voice, the rate of speech, either speaking faster or slower, and even breathing. So here are 2 quick exercises to get you going. Number 1, just synchronize the body language of somebody else. For 1 day, make it a point to synchronize the overall body language of the people you meet. You don't have to let on what you're up to. Just go for it and enjoy the experience. With each new person, be aware of their shoulders, their arms, their legs, their torso, and begin with the bigger movements, crossing arms or legs, leaning forward or back. This is the fastest way to build trust and communication. Just remember not to overdo it. Do as little as you need to adjust to the other person. The second part of the exercise we'll call make and break synchronization. Once you're good at synchronizing overall body language, and 1 day should make you an expert, practice synchronizing with someone for about 30 seconds and then breaking the synchronizing for 30 seconds. In other words, stop matching and mirroring the person and use your body and voice differently from the way they're using theirs. Then resynchronize, get back in synchronization again. Go through the cycle a few times. You'll actually feel the trust, concentration, and intimacy level drop significantly as you break synchronization, and you'll feel it return in a big way when you resynchronize. Continue to practice your synchronizing skills until they are second nature. So, to sum up, when you meet someone by chance or design for the first time in an open field, you should be able to find at least 3 things you have in common in the first minute or so, just by asking open questions, paying attention, and following pointers. In a social, safe, closed field, it's even easier because you can freely add tags to your introduction and get more free information, shake hands or hug in greeting, and ask more personal questions about holidays, movies, food, traveling, clothing, music, family, sports, books, or whatever. Practice your conversation skills and become comfortable with open questions, paying attention, giving quality feedback, following pointers, looking for free information, and hunting for common ground. Make synchronizing body language and voice tone second nature in your romantic adventures, and you'll find yourself natural and relaxed as you meet more and more people and the chemistry starts to flow. Now that you know how to fan the flames of conversation and synchronize for chemistry, we're going to ramp up your chemistry several notches and explore the fireworks of flirting. Chapter 8. The Art of Flirting. Flirting is more than just fun, it's fundamental. We're made for love. Our entire survival as a species depends upon it. So, while nature has endowed us with all the necessary parts we need to save ourselves from extinction, not everyone knows how to use them to their best advantage. This is particularly true when it comes to flirting. Here's a little story. Charlene, a manager with a large clothing chain, and Kira, a physiotherapist, arrive at the popular nightclub Galapagos early enough to get a table in the middle of the action, with a great view of the bar and the dance floor. Both women are fashionably dressed and look like they belong here. Charlene's hair is loose, a few strands wisping lightly across her face. Kira's hair is tied back. As Charlene talks to Kira, she scans the room and fiddles with the loose strands of her hair. Every couple of minutes she wiggles her body and from time to time puts her elbows on the table and rests her head on her hands, pouting and making eyes at the male prospects at the bar. Charlene thinks she's being sexy, but she's not. She's confusing being sexy with being cute. In fact, her actions only make her look insecure and childish, giving off immature energy. Kira, on the other hand, looks poised and composed. Most of the time she sits quietly, her head ever so slightly lowered, and pays attention to Charlene. Occasionally, though, as she sips her drink, her eyes will peer over the top of the glass and she'll slowly take in the room. In fact, if you watch closely, Kira seems to be operating at half the speed of Charlene. She looks confident and secure and is giving off grown-up sexual energy. The greater your air of private confidence, the greater your sex appeal, and vice versa. Now, Kira has spotted Harvey, a guy she recently saw at a party but never properly met. She'd been close enough that evening to overhear him talk about sailing in the Bahamas and thought he was attractive and interesting. And now here he is with a couple of other guys leaning against the bar. Kira keeps him in her peripheral vision and waits for him to turn in her direction. As soon as he does, Kira counts to 3, excuses herself, gets up from the table, and saunters towards the stairs up to the balcony, right past Harvey and his friends, hips subtly swaying, head slightly down. Why the lowered head? Because we humans seem to be more intrigued by coyness than brashness. Then Kira's eyes fix on her target for a quick moment of contact. He sees her. The second she knows Harvey has noticed her, she looks away coyly. But before Harvey has time to react, Kira glances at him again, this time closing her eyes ever so slightly as she offers a hint of a smile. Harvey gets the message. What you just observed is what scientists call a promise-withdraw routine on the part of Kira and an arousal response on the part of good old Harvey. When it comes right down to it, creating excitement is all about tension and release. Whether you're talking about scary movies, roller coaster rides, or human sexuality, the promise-withdraw routine that Kira used on Harvey is the very heart of flirting. It's used by both men and women to create arousal, and its dynamic is exactly what it says, giving attention, then taking it away, then giving it again. Tension, release, tension. Promise, withdraw, promise. Eye contact, look away, eye contact. One look doesn't necessarily mean anything, but Kira sauntered in a provocative way, gave Harvey a second look, and smiled with her head slightly lowered to suggest coyness. When you get a second look, you can assume he or she is interested. When eye contact triggers a smile, you can approach with confidence. All this adds up to an unmistakable signal of interest. Men and women all over the world use this basic routine based on a woman's saunter or a man's swagger, accompanied by eye contact and a smile, to signal and arouse interest in another person. So, Kira has tacitly offered an invitation, and moments later Harvey responds. He comes up the stairs to the balcony where he can plainly see Kira looking down at the dance floor below. He looks her in the eye, smiles, and introduces himself. "Another drink?" Harvey asks. "Thanks," Kira replies, smiling, "but I'm here with a friend and we're celebrating her promotion, so I should really get back to her." "Well," Harvey replies, "I don't want to sound too forward, but you could invite me to celebrate with you. In fact, I'd be happy to buy some champagne. It's always nice to have a real excuse to buy bubbly." Although Kira knows that Charlene wouldn't mind if Harvey joined them, she says, "That's very generous of you, but we promised ourselves a girls' night out. You know, catch up on personal stuff." She inclines her head, looking at him briefly, then glances away. Harvey asks, "How about tomorrow then? Same time, same place, or same time, different place, or even same place, different time?" Kira laughs. "Sorry, I'm not free tomorrow, but if you give me your number, I'll call you after I look at my schedule. I'm sure we can do something at some point." The truth is, Kira knows that Charlene wouldn't care if she spent a bit more time with Harvey. Similarly, she's not that busy the following night. All she has planned is laundry. What Kira is doing is using the universally recognized principle of scarcity as a part of her flirting strategy. As a general rule, people want more of what they can't have, so a simple way to increase your desirability when flirting is to use the principle of scarcity. The idea is to give the impression that you're popular and in demand. Yeah, people and even companies use this ploy all the time, but our reaction to it is so instinctual that we never stop falling for it. When radio, television, and print advertisers bombard us with statements like "while supplies last," or "limit 2 per customer," or "limited edition" and "offer only good till Sunday," they're working on the principle of scarcity. When something is in short supply, or even simply appears to be in short supply, we humans feel the urge to compete for it, whether it be land, power, favor, or especially the affections of another person. Conversely, and some might say perversely, study after study has shown that whatever's presented as more available is perceived as less valuable. So, how will taking advantage of this principle help make someone fall in love with you? The answer is by upping your value in the early stages of a relationship, making you seem rare, precious, and worth pursuing. We can break flirting down into 3 main types: public flirting, social flirting, and private flirting. Public flirting is usually a spontaneous, amusing, and harmless way to brighten someone's day, to add a little play into life or an otherwise routine relationship, and generally spread a little happiness around. Social flirting adds a sexual element to the mix, signaling interest. Private flirting is one-on-one. It radiates sex appeal and enhances your ability to make someone fall in love with you in 90 minutes or less. Naturally, your attitude, clothing, self-confidence, and personality all contribute to your ability to flirt. But whether you are a man or a woman, generating and sending out sexual messages through grown-up sexual energy is an integral part of making yourself more irresistible to a partner. Sex appeal is what separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls. Boys and girls strive for cute, but it's the grown-up men and women with their air of confidence, poise, and mystery who exude real sex appeal. If you're not sure what image you're projecting, take a look at photographs or videos of yourself at parties or other social events when you weren't consciously posing for the camera. Observe your body language and mannerisms. What do you notice? If you tape recorded a dinner party at your place and listened to your voice on tape, what would you hear? Lots of schoolboy guffawing or girlish high-pitched giggles and shrieks? Both of these can be fun and endearing, but they're not sensually appealing. So maybe it's time to leave some of them behind and find a new way of presenting yourself in public. It may be hard to change the habits of a lifetime, but you can. And the first step to doing so is self-awareness. Focus on how you sound and how you move. These have a major, though often unrecognized impact on how others perceive you. Get out the voice recorder and practice speaking at different pitches and speeds. Practice different ways of laughing. There are a million different laughs, some obnoxious, some innocuous, some charming. Go for charming. Notice how people with good posture exude confidence. Watch how they carry themselves, how they sit, and the gestures they make. Then adapt the movements and gestures that appeal to you and your own body and personality. As with fashion, though, remember that some body language will end up fitting you like a bad suit. If it doesn't feel right at first and it continues chafing, it's probably best to avoid. You must be yourself, but you want to be your best self. So know what you want, then modify your behavior until you get it. We all flirt in one way or another from time to time. There are many situations where you probably don't even realize you're flirting. You banter with the woman at the pharmacy or joke with the man at the dry cleaners. Or the guy at the deli counter smiles and addresses you by your name every time he sees you. These are the kind of interactions humans are designed to enjoy and respond to. Public flirtation is innocent. It just makes us feel good. It is, after all, a simple form of flattery. And it keeps us in touch with other people. So do not underestimate the importance of flirtation in your daily life. Fortunately, you can take advantage of opportunities to flirt almost everywhere, anytime. You can flirt for seconds or minutes, and it can happen at work, when you travel, when you shop, at church, the ball game, at a music club, at a funeral or wedding, or even an AA meeting. But sooner or later you'll decide that someone with whom you've flirted deserves additional attention, and that you're interested in finding out more about him or her. That's when it's time to try some social flirting. Social flirting is a friendly and playful way to let someone know that you've noticed them and you are interested. And it can signal anything from, "Hi, I like your style, let's get to know each other better," to "Catch me if you can and see what might happen." When we envision a typical social flirtation, we tend to picture two people chatting at a bar or a club or a party. Both are beautifully dressed, they sip their wine elegantly, the camera cuts to a close-up of their eyes, sending unmistakable signals to each other as they make witty remarks loaded with sexual tension. Well, that's great, but there are many simpler and less cinematic forms of social flirtation. It's all about making a personal connection and getting the chemistry flowing. You can use a hello or a goodbye to emphasize how great things are when you're together. You can lend her your jacket if she looks cold. You can accidentally brush up against him or bump shoulders casually when walking down the street. Throw a quick glance, compliment her, cast him a sidelong gaze, tell her how great she'd look in that sexy dress you just saw in the store window. A woman can send sexual signals by licking her lips slightly, and I mean slightly, nonchalantly tracing the outline of her collar with her fingers, playing with her hair or jewelry, or running her hand down her thigh. A man can do the same by straightening his tie, running a hand through his hair, or gently tossing his head. But there's obviously a fine line between too much sexual innuendo and not enough. As a general rule, you should take care that your behavior isn't sending mixed signals or promising more than you're prepared to deliver. Flaunt your sexuality too much in your social flirting, and you'll probably come across as a tease or cute or silly. Too little flaunting, and you run the risk of becoming just a friend. Let's look at another example. Jenna is a naturally outgoing person who finds it easy to talk to strangers. While waiting at the Baltimore airport to board a flight to Memphis, she spotted a guy who seems both artistic and down-to-earth, just her type. He's wearing a black T-shirt with jeans, his hair's deliberately tousled up, and his black leather bag looks worn but very classy. He's reading a newspaper, and she notices he's not wearing a wedding ring. Jenna sits down opposite him, within his social space, and makes herself comfortable. The scene unfolds. As she pushes her hair back, Jenna realizes her left earring has gone missing. She glances down at her lap, then around her chair, and under the seats next to her. The interesting-looking man has noticed her dilemma, and Jenna sees he's smiling. She has his attention. She gazes directly at him, a little embarrassed, and shakes her head. "I just lost an earring somewhere." He offers to help, but they don't find it. "Did you have it on when you got here?" he asks as Jenna sits back down. He sits back down too, but this time he says, "May I?" and takes a seat next to her. He knows that moving into someone's personal or private space can make them feel uncomfortable or even intimidated. "I'm not completely sure. I hope I didn't lose it at the gallery." That's free information. "What does it look like?" Jenna turns her head, moves a little closer, and brushes her hair back to show him the remaining earring. After some small talk in which he asks her about the gallery and learns that Jenna will be on business in Memphis for 4 days, he asks her if she'd like to meet up and do something. It's his hometown, and he knows all the good spots. She says she's not sure about her schedule, but asks for his phone number. This is obviously not the first time Jenna has lost an earring when she's sitting close to an attractive guy. By involving him in an amusing predicament, she lured him into conversation, learned enough to know she was really attracted to him, engineered a subtly sexual moment by getting close to show him the remaining earring, and maneuvered him into asking her out. Had she decided she wasn't interested after all, she could have been less forthcoming, or, if it went that far, turned down his offer of a drink. They would have continued to talk graciously for a minute or so, then wished each other a pleasant flight, and gone their own ways. If you feel flirt challenged or feel like you're not attractive or clever enough to get away with it, don't worry. Flirting in general has more to do with playfulness and vitality than with broad shoulders and a pretty face. Dr. Monica Moore, a psychologist at Webster University in St. Louis, has conducted research on the flirting techniques used in bars, shopping malls, and places young people go to meet each other. She concluded that it's not the most physically appealing young people who get approached, but the ones who signal their availability through basic flirting techniques like eye contact and smiles. Just signaling your interest in someone gets you halfway there, whether you're a man or a woman. Let's talk for a moment about personal space. As humans, we walk around within an invisible cocoon known as our personal space. The farther away someone is from us, the less threatening he or she is. The closer he or she gets, the more uncomfortable we can become, unless it's someone we've already decided to let in. Different cultures have slightly different versions of personal space, but basically the circles of defense start roughly 15 feet out, beyond which is a person's public space. Running from there to approximately arm's length is their social space. Then to within their arm's length is their personal space, and finally, within a foot or so, is the person's private space. One of the biggest mistakes you can make during any first encounter is misjudging a person's personal space and their private space and causing his or her emotional self-defense system to kick in. Obviously, in some everyday situations like on a crowded train or an elevator or sitting in a theater or flying coach, we're able to turn off those defenses. But when we're flirting, our senses are already heightened and an unexpected intrusion can be a big turnoff. Here's an exercise on walking. It's called Men Swagger and Women Saunter. Guys, if you never saw Saturday Night Fever, you missed the best swagger routine ever filmed. John Travolta's famous walk down the street to the Bee Gees' Staying Alive. Rent the movie and buy 2 pairs of the most expensive, sexiest underpants you can find. I'll explain why in a minute. Then watch the film, then put on 1 pair of your fancy new briefs, and, of course, the rest of your clothes, and go for a swagger. Walk down the street, along the boardwalk, or through the mall with a smile on your face and Staying Alive playing in your head. And try to make eye contact with every attractive woman you see. Don't stop until you feel you're the sexiest guy in town. Just remember to keep it subtle. Okay, ladies, you buy a copy of Stan Getz and Astrid Gilberto performing The Girl from Ipanema, and 2 pairs of the sexiest, most expensive panties you can find. Learn at least the first verse of the song by heart, up to and including the part that goes, and when she passes, each one she passes goes, aha. Then, put on 1 pair of those panties and your clothes and go for a saunter. Take the dog for a walk or stroll to the office or to class. As you hear the music in your mind, lower your head ever so slightly, make eye contact, and smile at those lucky enough to be blessed by your attention. This exercise is a must. You have to bring your sexiness to the surface if you're going to make a deep connection with another person. If you can't feel your sexiness, no one else will. In the beginning, you'll probably feel a little less self-conscious if you use an MP3 player, but dump it as soon as you can and get in the groove on your own. Soon your swagger or your saunter will be second nature, and you'll be able to drop into it anytime, anywhere. Oh yeah, and here's why the sexy, expensive underwear. Because you're going to have the look written all over your face, the one that says, I have a secret. And I told you to buy 2 pairs because you're going to wear the other brand spanking new pair when you go out on your date. That should keep a smile on your face. And now let's look at the principles behind private flirting. Unlike public and social flirting, Private flirting is strictly about sex appeal. Not the sort that's for public consumption, but the one-on-one sort. It's about two people detecting and responding to each other's energy. When you're with someone who may be your matched opposite and the clock is ticking, you'd better know how to flirt one-on-one and show off your sex appeal. If not, your burgeoning relationship can very easily slip into the just friends mode. To get to love, you have to learn how to muster and harness your sexual energy and then deliver it as part of your overall personality package. Sound daunting? Actually, it's a piece of cake, or rather 4 pieces, which I call getting physical, getting grounded, eye work, and practice dating. Let's look at the first one, getting physical. Getting physical is about getting in touch with your body through exercise, a necessity since sexuality is deeply bound up in your physical animal self. To be a really effective private flirt, you have to be deeply, viscerally aware of that part of you. You might have already gotten involved in a new physical activity as part of your socializing action plan, but if not, sign up for some classes. Even a 1 or 2 week program will do the trick. Skydiving, kickboxing, belly dancing, yoga, tennis, weightlifting, taekwondo, rumba lessons, anything where your body is 100% involved. Oh yeah, and find the best instructor or association around. He or she will be your first flirt ally, helping you tune into your own physical awareness. If you're exercising individually, avoid distractions like watching TV on the treadmill or listening to music while you jog. Instead, listen to your body by cycling your awareness over and over from your pelvis to the pit of your stomach, to your chest, to your throat, and back to your pelvis. This will set your sexual energy in motion. Number 2, getting grounded. In the story at the beginning of this chapter, you notice that Kira moved at half the speed of Charlene. Kira was grounded. She knew how to breathe. When you control your breath, you automatically calm your nerves and relax, which in turn allows you to control your mind and your body and expand your power and energy. There may be times when you're dating or approaching people that you suddenly feel nervous or anxious or inadequate, and that you want to make a run for it. This is because you've entered panic mode. When this mechanism picks up signals that you are nervous or uncomfortable with the situation, it starts to pump adrenaline and shifts your breathing up into your chest, so you're literally ready for a quick sprint for the hills. Unfortunately, your partner will very quickly pick up on this and also experience some discomfort, and the whole thing just can start to come undone. So stay calm. This is where belly breathing, or diaphragmatic inhalation, to give it its proper name, comes from, helping to ground you. When you breathe by pushing out your belly, your diaphragm is actually pulled down, which in turn allows your lungs to fill to capacity, give or take a few nooks and crannies at the top. This puts more oxygen into your blood with less effort from your heart. As a result, you literally slow down. That panicky feeling subsides, and you can resume encouraging your chosen one to fall in love with you without sweaty palms and labored breathing. As well as being the most efficient way to breathe, belly breathing also massages your abdominal organs with every breath and improves your circulation. So get into the habit to enhance both your emotional and physical well-being. Over the next few days, whenever you can, place one hand on your chest and the other on your abdomen, and practice breathing in and out until the hand on your abdomen is the only one that moves. Number 3, eye work. The word flirt, in its current meaning, dates back to mid-18th century England, where Lady Frances Shirley is credited with coining the term fan flirts to describe women who use the flitting rhythm of their fans, in combination with their eyes and mouths, to tease and send sexual signals. Public use of the fan may be gone, but flirting is still, first and foremost, about making eyes. Flirting begins with the eyes because, as in most face-to-face communication, your signals go where your eyes go. After that, you can flirt with your mouth, a smile, a subtle pout, with your personality, with your shyness or your coyness, or with your sense of humor. You can flirt with words or with food and drink. You can flirt for business or for pleasure, with goals or without. The possibilities are endless, but first you must make eyes. Love was just a glance away, Frank Sinatra sang in the song Strangers in the Night, for those of you who remember it. And boy, was he right. A slow, deliberate gaze across a crowded room, or better still, while walking slowly toward the person, will let him or her know you're interested. But just remember, we're talking a gaze here, not steely staring or a loony gawk. The most irresistible and sensual technique in flirting one-on-one is to make eye contact with your man or woman, then shift your gaze every 2 or 3 seconds from their eyes to their mouth, then back again. This is how a fan flirt would beguile her suitors, first using the fan to hide her mouth and reveal only her eyes, as she gazed from her partner's eyes to his mouth, then back again, then, while she looked him in the eye, lowering the fan to reveal her own mouth, while lowering her eyes to gaze at his mouth. And all the while, she'd use the gentle rhythm of the fan strokes to intensify the sexual innuendo. After a heart-stopping moment, she would cover her mouth again with the fan and bring her eyes back to his. Wowee! Throw in a gentle tilt of the head at the right moment and the slightest lowering of his and or her head, and you have a loving symphony of inviting body language, and all from the neck up. So don't bother with the fan, but do alternate your gaze from the eyes to the mouth when talking with your date. It's a very, very subtle move, but make no mistake, it signals sex. You'll have to practice your eye work, so choose a few people from your daily life on whom to try out these techniques. Be aware of your own body, belly breathe low and slow, synchronize your body language, and make eyes as you talk. 4. Practice dating. You wouldn't go for your driving test without practicing first, and you wouldn't bake an apple pie for your favorite uncle without testing the recipe, so why on earth would you go on an important date without practicing first? I know this might sound odd, but arrange 2 or 3 safe dates with people you feel good with. A friend, someone you haven't seen in a while, someone's brother. Just don't pick someone with whom you already have a well-established pattern of behavior, which you might just slip back into without thinking. These low-stakes dates are to help you practice your new skills and evaluate what you feel good about and what needs work, but without the attendant anxiety of a real date and real expectations. The more you practice dating, the better you'll get. But 2 practice dates is the absolute minimum you'll need before a real date with someone who could be your matched opposite. You're not going to seduce the person or make them want to give up the world for you, but you are going to make them feel warm and tender towards you. Remember, ask lots of open questions, give feedback, and share information about yourself. Act like an adult. Be aware of your body and your sexuality. Move slowly and with as much grace as you can muster up, and be very manly or very womanly. Practice your eye work, belly breathe, synchronize, have fun, and above all, keep the conversation and the mood upbeat and positive. More than anything, a date requires talking. That rules out movies, sports events, and other super noisy or super silent locations. When planning any real date, ask yourself these 4 questions. 1. Is it somewhere he or she will feel safe? 2. Is it something he or she will enjoy? 3. Is it somewhere we can talk? And 4. Is it different? This is not going to be a normal event. It's supposed to be special for both of you. Normal is easy, it's everywhere. This event needs an original context. When you eventually meet someone who might be your matched opposite, use the same 4 criteria, but choose somewhere extra special and romantic. You may well be remembering it for the rest of your life. Romance is a fire that you must keep burning throughout your relationship. And one way to do that is by remembering every sight, sound, feeling, smell, and taste of your first encounter and letting it grow in the imagination and in the memory. One of the most profound ways you can be matched with someone else is through the way you both make sense of the world around you. We do this by taking in information from the outside world through our senses and then putting these sensory experiences into words. In our day-to-day lives, we rely mainly on 3 senses: sight, sound, and touch, or more broadly, physical sensation. As we develop through childhood, each of us begins, without consciously realizing it, to develop a favorite among these senses to help us make sense of the world. Some people rely more on the way things look, some on the way things sound, and others on the way things feel. Although matched opposites tend not to be matched in their primary sense preference, here's an example of why this is important when you're making someone fall in love with you. Here's a little story. Ben has decided he can just as easily read through his notes for tomorrow's presentation at a beachfront cafe as he can at the office. So now he's sitting on the patio, trying not to get too distracted by the colourful parade of people strolling, rollerblading, or walking their dogs along the boardwalk. Jackie, who comes here all the time in the spring, is at the next table, cramming for an upcoming midterm grad school exam. When the waiter comes over, Jackie orders a double espresso and a slice of almond cake. Without realizing it, perhaps, Ben orders the same thing. The waiter notices and gives a little mental shrug. When he comes back, he puts Jackie's order in front of her and says, 1 double espresso, 1 almond cake. Then he moves over to Ben's table and says the same thing, exactly the same way. Ben and Jackie look at each other and laugh. 20 minutes later, the waiter returns. Ben orders another coffee and takes the opportunity to lean over to Jackie and ask, "Same again?" "Thanks, maybe later," she smiles. After an hour or so and a little playful flirting through eye contact and smiles, Ben and Jackie get talking. Now it's near the end of the day, so Ben plucks up his courage and decides to take things a step further. Although he's not aware of it, Ben is a visual person, one who's learned to respond to the world through the way things look. "Do you fancy taking a walk down the beach to see the sunset?" he suggests. "I love the way the sky changes colour so fast, and seeing the lights come on in the cafes as it gets dark, it's a great sight." Did you notice Ben talks about the way things look? "I don't know," Jackie replies. "I don't think I feel like it. I'm comfortable here for a little while longer, and then I've got to go. But thanks." Did she say feel and comfortable? Maybe Jackie can't easily relate to Ben's little sketch of the sunset. Why? Because Jackie is a touchy-feely kind of person who's learned to rely more on the way things feel and make her decisions accordingly. Jackie is a kinesthetic person. Fortunately, Ben has read about the different ways people process experiences, so he recognizes Jackie's choice of words and also notices her comfortable, baggy clothes. He also notes that she speaks rather slowly and often looks down when she's thinking. The way to her heart, then, is to tell her how it'll feel, not look, to go for a walk along the beach at sunset. So Ben tries again. "You know what I like most, though, about walking on the beach?" he asks. "No," she says. "What?" "It's the softness of the sand and the way the water swirls up around your ankles and that sort of salty, warm mist that hangs in the air around you. You know what I mean?" Jackie tilts her head and grins. "Now you're making me feel like I've earned a break, so why not?" She shuts her books, stuffs them into her backpack, and gives it a playful slap. "Let's go." If Jackie had been an auditory person instead of a kinesthetic person, Ben would have noticed her gaze tended to shift sideways, either to the left or right, towards her ears when she's thinking, or if she talks about the way things sound. In that situation, he would have done well to invite her for a walk along the beach by saying something like this. "You know what I like most about walking on the beach? The sound of the waves as they break and that gentle hiss as the surf glides up the sand." When you match yourself with another person's favorite sense, you're not only talking the same language, but also seeing the world through the same eyes, hearing through the same ears, and feeling through the same feelings. And as you've just seen, heard, and felt, that can be a powerfully seductive thing. So, which description of the walk along the beach did you most easily relate to? Visual people are the snappy, impeccably tailored folks who dress to impress and judge others by their appearance. Visual people tend to make quick decisions but need to see evidence. They frequently look up to the left and right when looking for answers to questions. A visual person may wave his or her hands around frequently when talking and have a fast-paced, monotone voice that seems to come from high up in his or her body. Visuals use picture language, saying things like, "I see what you're saying, that looks good, do you see my point of view?" Auditory people are often relaxed and stylish in the way they dress. They've more melodic, smooth, fluid, expressive voices that come from the chest area. They gesture somewhat less than visuals and often look from side to side towards their ears when thinking about what they'll say next. Auditory people favor sound language, saying things like, "I hear you, that rings a bell, sounds terrific, tell me more." Kinesthetic people are all about feeling and physical sensation. They care about comfort in their clothing and their surroundings. While many kinesthetic folk tend to have somewhat fuller figures, you'll also find many athletes who are kinesthetic. They have slower, easygoing voices and gestures and tend to look down when they think about what to say next. Kinesthetic people make decisions slowly and pay attention to detail and speak in physical languages, using phrases like, "it just feels right," or "let's get a handle on things," or "do you grasp the concept? I'm up against the wall. Hang in there. I can't put my finger on anything concrete." So, to sum up, flirting is fun. Some people are born to flirt, others have natural flirting skills that seem to come and go depending on the circumstances, and some of us just have no clue and need to be taught. But we all have the potential. Flirting can move a regular, pleasant conversation to a different level, or create an air of expectancy that says, it's just the two of us. You can flirt with your eyes, with your mouth, you can flirt with your body, with your voice, flirt with your sex appeal, flirt with your words, and flirt with your senses. Public flirting is a question of attitude. You don't have to be intense about it. Every day you come into contact with people left, right, and centre, whether you're at a bar, on the bus, at a pottery class. So make eye contact, smile, and go over and say hi if it feels right. Social flirting revolves around a promise-withdraw routine and is a playful way to signal you're interested in someone and want to get to know them more. Private flirting, on the other hand, is about intensifying playfulness and sexual overtones as you make that special someone fall in love with you. If you're well prepared and practiced and flirt with panache and subtlety, you'll make yourself irresistible. The stakes can be low or they can be high, but regardless, flirting is a way that people can communicate positively through play. By flirting well and respectfully, you may make someone's day, and if you're lucky enough to be flirting with your matched opposite, possibly the rest of their life. So relax, have fun, and enjoy it. Chapter 9. Creating Intimacy. A good old heart-to-heart talk with you and your partner both opening up and discussing your experiences, your ideas, your hopes, your dreams and feelings is the single best way to create emotional intimacy. The closeness and confidence that develop give birth to that wonderful, just the two of us feeling that's the cornerstone of a loving relationship. It creates understanding and unity and leads to love and to bonding. At the heart of creating intimacy is self-disclosure. Basically, self-disclosure is telling someone else about yourself, your experiences, your ideas, your hopes and dreams, your feelings. But it's not a one-way street. The goal here is that your partner offers the same kind of information about him or herself. The simplest way to engage this return of information is to synchronize your body language and your tone of voice and to give feedback. Synchronizing builds trust and comfort, and feedback lets the person feel as if he or she is truly being heard. Emotional intimacy has two main components, risk and commitment. Risk because you're opening yourself up, and commitment because as you open up together, you become intertwined emotionally. Part of the process is that you take turns. You reveal something personal about yourself, then he or she reveals something personal about him or herself. This kind of self-disclosure is an invitation to trust. There are levels of risk involved, but the greater the risk, the deeper the trust. Generally speaking, low-risk self-disclosure is personal information that a good friend will probably know about you, your likes, your dislikes, how many brothers and sisters you have, and light-hearted stuff from your past and present like your hobbies or your pastimes. My favorite thing is to tinker with my vintage car. I'm always forgetting birthdays. I can't tell a joke to save my life, that sort of thing. Medium-risk self-disclosure is personal information you wouldn't normally reveal and trust to just anyone. Your opinions, your dreams, your aspirations, your most embarrassing moment, good and bad judgments or choices you've made. Like, when I was young, I dreamed of being a professional tennis player, but when it came down to it, I realized I didn't have the drive, or I came here on holiday 3 years ago and I never left, or what I'd really like to do is quit my job and go and raise horses in Montana. These kinds of revelations will help you both get a fuller sense of your compatibility. You'll be able to tell whether it's worth spending more time with this person and if there's a real opportunity for mutual trust. High-risk self-disclosure is only visited occasionally on a first encounter. It involves trusting and sharing your deepest feelings and even your fears and insecurities. Things like, I sometimes wonder if people find me interesting, or I'm the black sheep of the family, or I'm too old for games. High-risk self-disclosure usually requires you change the upbeat tone of low-risk and medium-risk self-disclosure to a more serious key. And while high risk can lead to deep trust and bonding, it's not called high risk for nothing. Think very hard before you reveal things that might be a complete turn-off to someone who doesn't yet know you very well. And remember, you're not just going to say this sort of thing to anyone. You are building deep rapport and encouraging emotional investment in someone who might just end up being your matched opposite. When you feel the time is right for self-disclosure, it can help to have a few things in mind rather than blurting out the first thing that comes to you. Remember, your potential partner is in select reject mode too, and you still need to be charming and not alarming. So come up with 3 or 4 things you think he or she would understand and perhaps feel the same way about. When the time is right, reveal one and see where it goes. If the response is good, you can go on to the next one, taking in turns, sharing feelings and ideas. There is risk involved in this kind of self-disclosure, so here are a few ground rules. First, move cautiously and considerately, paying close attention to the feedback you receive. The flow should be natural and easy, no surprises, no shock value statements, and the mood must remain upbeat. Second, judge your topics. Sharing experiences, trips you've taken, adventures you've had and the like, is probably the least threatening form of self-disclosure. Sharing ideas involves more risk since the conversation can get heated if you get into politics, religion, and values. Sharing feelings is the highest risk kind of disclosure and can bring you to the threshold of love. So be sensitive and moderate your self-disclosure according to your sense of how reserved the other person is. Third, you must take turns. When one of you reveals something, the other must respond in kind. When talking with a friend, it's not always necessary for him or her to respond to your ideas, your experiences, your hopes and feelings. In mutual self-disclosure, however, you're asking your date to reciprocate. Handle it like a game of tennis, taking turns, cementing what you have in common and determining how much you really are like one another, one revelation at a time. As you finish speaking, look away. This signals you've finished speaking. When you look back at the person, you're inviting them to speak, and they will do so. And remember, you elicit free information with an inquiring look, a long moment of quiet eye contact, or a simple, "What about you?" And fourth, pace yourself. In a way, the process of self-revelation is like an emotional striptease, but no one's going to get beyond their undies. You don't just back up your confidential truck and dump everything out at once. There's only so much most people are prepared to reveal about themselves early on, and there's only so much you want to hear from the other person. Mutual self-disclosure is the key to intimacy, but there is a thin line between baring your soul and unloading your baggage. Stay away from anything embarrassing or socially inappropriate, and you probably already know this, but it's worth repeating. Stay well away from discussing your previous dating and sexual entanglements, at least until you're fully committed to each other. And even then, tread very lightly. A discussion of your romantic past can quickly slide into comparison, competition, and insecurity. Keep in mind the principle of scarcity and play your cards one at a time. A little mystery is good for love. Too much talking, you deflate the mystery, inflate your vulnerabilities, and end up appearing pitiful, boring, and, well, definitely not sexy. On the other hand, if you talk too little, sooner or later you're going to stop being mysterious and just become hard work. You may even come off as arrogant or aloof and seem just as boring and unsexy as the person who doesn't know when to shut up. Sometimes being nervous can cause you to talk too much or not enough. If you feel nervous, stop and call it something else. Exciting sounds much better. A few moments of belly breathing can calm you down. Then you can turn your excitement into a smile, saying to yourself, "Hey, am I ever excited? This is great, great, great." If you look carefully at a couple as they become absorbed with one another, there's a pattern to what happens. Their movements and voice characteristics become synchronized as they create emotional intimacy and talk each other into love. There's plenty of eye contact, smiles, open body language, private flirting, and a great, useful attitude. But there's also a detectable pattern to the way the conversation flows. It goes something like this. The conversation starts with small talk. Small talk is light or casual conversation about nothing in particular. A good place to start this chit-chat is with a location or occasion statement followed by an open question, as we discussed previously. The weather, the news, or sports will do in a pinch, but don't linger on them too long. Very early on, the small talk gets blended in with play talk. Play talk is anything funny or playful, from an amusing observation about the location or occasion to something funny that you've read or seen or heard or experienced lately. Late-night TV hosts use play talk all the time. Check out how they do it. Engaging in play talk will give you an idea of your date's sense of humor and attitude towards life. And then, after a while, the conversation shifts into the higher gears. Using small talk and play talk as a base, the conversation shifts at a certain point through low risk, medium risk, and very occasionally high risk mutual self-disclosure. Remember to look out for your first Me Too moment. It can take your conversation to another level. That moment can and should come very early on, during play talk or even in small talk. Look out for it, because as soon as it happens, that's your trigger to move to low and medium risk mutual self-disclosure. The Me Too trigger means you've gone from first gear to second gear in terms of intimacy. Here's an exercise to help you. In preparation for changing the tone from just friends to something more intimate, think about the kinds of things you might reveal. It can help to write them down in a journal or a notebook so you can review, amend, and add to them from time to time. So, for low-risk disclosure, what could you say about your likes and your dislikes without getting too deep? What light-hearted anecdotes can you talk about from your past or your present? And what amusing personal stories could you share about your family and your friends, your hobbies, your hometown, your school, or your work? For medium-risk self-disclosure, what could you share about your opinions, your personal feelings, your dreams and your aspirations, your plans for the future, your good and bad judgments or choices you've made? For high-risk self-disclosure, consider the following. What will you need to share when the time is right, in order to have a better chance at intimacy and closeness? What can you say about your deep feelings, your fears, your insecurities, your understandable human weaknesses? Okay, so what can you do if the person you're with is reluctant to talk about his or herself? Well, you can synchronize for a start. There's no more powerful way to open somebody up than by synchronizing your body language, your voice characteristics, your favorite words, your attitude, your breathing, and your timing. This will get you into his or her mood. Take it easy, though. Ask gentle questions and be patient. More than likely, the person is kinesthetic, so speak in his or her language. If you're the one who's a little cautious or reserved or shy about revealing your experiences, ideas, and feelings, start off slowly. Or even better, practice with a friend. Tell him about your holidays or your work. Tell her about your hometown or your favorite restaurant. Just describe things. When you start feeling more confident, you can start putting more of your personality into it, adding opinions, perhaps about a book or a movie, or the headlines in today's paper. Once you can do this comfortably, try telling someone how you feel about him or her. Here's a little story. Mario attended one of my early workshops on making someone fall in love with you. Mario was 29 and had trouble meeting women. When he did meet someone he found attractive, he tried to use his expensive car and fancy clothes as a shortcut to connecting. It didn't work, so now he's ready to try my method. Mario has met Amanda several times in the coffee shop next to his office. A few times they've bantered good-naturedly about which coffee they prefer. Having attended a few of my workshops, he's gotten pretty good at getting free information, so he's learned that Amanda works at a sports injury clinic and she's an amateur competitive cyclist. Mario likes Amanda's energy, her warm smile and her athletic build. He feels good around her and suspects they could be matched opposites. He wants to ask her out, but he doesn't want it to be a normal date. He wants it to be a special event for both of them. So he decides to ask Amanda to cycle down to a festival on the waterfront. Mario has also carefully thought out how to ask Amanda. So here's what he says. Hey, how about a bike ride down to that buskers festival on the lakefront this weekend? I haven't ridden my bike in months, so you'll have to slow down for me. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing me at the clinic instead of at the coffee shop. Mario followed certain guidelines in coming up with his plan. By deliberately adding common ground, bike riding, and a hint of humour, his physical condition, he softened the question and made it easier for Amanda to say yes. Romance needs encouragement at the start, so the way you invite someone out is as important as the nature of the outing itself. The more fun, exciting, and unique you can make your invitation sound, the greater the chance of the invitee accepting it. Try this exercise on how to ask for a date. Take a few minutes to think about what, if anything, you know about your date. Where did you first meet? What do you have in common? Where can you go that would be unique and memorable while offering a comfortable environment for conversation? Where could you go that could incorporate your shared interests? Now, consider your choice of words. Think about how to bring up common ground or shared interests. How to keep your request light and casual by interjecting a little bit of humour, and how to soften the request. List a few ideas for what you might say when you ask for a date. So, back to Mario and Amanda. Mario meets Amanda at a downtown square. Before they set off, they engage in some small talk. "Hey, it feels great being out on a day like this," Amanda says. "Sure does," Mario answers. "I just love the sun on my skin." "Hey, nice bike," he adds, looking at Amanda's fancy mountain bike. Then he turns to face her, smiling, pointing his heart at her heart, and making sure to keep his body language open. "I'm relieved you didn't bring your racer." She grins, already unconsciously synchronizing him, then looks at his bike. "Yours isn't too bad either. Shimano brakes, good derailleur. I thought you said you weren't very serious about riding." "Hey, I was going to ride my tricycle, but then I got brave and took out the two-wheeler." Amanda laughs and gives a mock bow. "Well, I'm honored." They've definitely moved from small talk to play talk, and Mario's having fun, so he decides to reveal something personal, but not too risky. "Seriously, though, I actually feel great on a bike. I love the wind in my face and the sense of sailing along under my own steam." Amanda's eyes light up. "I know what you mean. I'm really happiest when I'm riding." Did you notice she just responded with some low-risk self-disclosure of her own? They get on their bikes and set off. Down at the waterfront, they lock up their bikes and stroll toward the festival grounds. Mario, who normally walks at a laid-back pace, picks up Amanda's brisker walk. "Hey, look at that," he says. They paused to join a crowd surrounding two guys on unicycles juggling 3 eggs, a frying pan, and a lit butane torch back and forth between the two of them. Somehow by the end they have 3 fried eggs in the pan and are still on the unicycles. "Pretty amazing," says Amanda. "You know something? I've always wanted to learn how to ride a unicycle. It's supposed to be really hard." "No kidding, me too." Mario can't believe he's gotten a Me Too moment so quickly and easily. But he really has always wanted to learn. "Are you serious?" Amanda leans towards him slightly as she says this and looks directly at him. "I am. Of course, I've always wanted to learn how to fry an egg as well." Amanda laughs, but Mario notices she's no longer leaning towards him. In fact, she's looking away. Whoops. He realizes that although the joke was funny, the timing was wrong. Here, Amanda had just willingly revealed a little dream of hers. He'd moved things toward greater intimacy with the Me Too moment, but then he'd pulled the dialogue back by cracking a joke. But maybe he can recover from it. So he looks at her. "It's true, you know, when I was a kid, I used to love the circus, all of it, but I got a special kick out of the clowns on unicycles." Amanda looks back at him. "How come?" she asks, as if testing to see if he's serious or just a clown himself, the kind of guy who's always making jokes, and that's all he does. "Well, I don't normally admit this to many people, but," and he casually brushes his hair off his forehead as he says this, mirroring her gesture, "I was a klutz. I was the last kid on my block to learn to ride a two-wheeler. I was 7 years old, still had the training wheels on." Mario has just revealed a more serious soft spot. He's moved into medium-risk territory now. Amanda looks at him sympathetically. "That couldn't have felt very good." "You got that right. I got teased real bad, so the fact that clowns could do that with only one wheel really did seem like magic. Not to mention dangerous. They were always acting like they were going to fall off, and of course I thought it was all real danger, so I was doubly impressed." Amanda smiles again, and Mario notices that her shoulders have seemed to relax ever so slightly. He makes sure his are relaxed as well. I remember the first time I ever went to the circus, she says finally. I was really young, like 3 or 4, and I cried through most of the clown acts because I thought they were really hurting each other when they bopped each other on the head and stuff. Amanda's grinning as she says all this and shaking her head as though at her own silliness, but then she quickly looks down and nervously tugs her hair again. Mario can see that Amanda is feeling vulnerable and a little embarrassed about revealing this particular soft spot. You must have been a pretty sensitive kid. Yeah, I guess. Mario and Amanda gaze at each other for what seems like a very long time. Mario looks into her eyes, then down to her lips, then back to her eyes. Then he blushes beet red and Amanda gives him a huge grin. So, you want an ice cream? He says as a pushcart vendor goes by. It's getting really hot. Sensing that Amanda is shyer about personal disclosure than he is, Mario has decided to throw in some small talk for a few seconds to keep things from getting too heavy or threatening. Sure, she answers, grinning, but only if they've got chocolate. I think vanilla's just a waste of calories. I'll second that, Mario says, grinning back. Another Me Too moment. Amanda seems genuinely at ease now, so as he hands her a chocolate ice cream cone, he says, You know, I can really relate to your clown story. Not only was I a klutz, but I was a sensitive kid too. It was really easy to hurt my feelings. I think I got over that part, but I'm still a klutz. Another soft spot revealed. He hopes that won't turn her off. She's clearly not a klutz if she competes in bike races. But no, she's still smiling at him. You don't seem klutzy to me, she says. Aha, thinks Mario, that sounds pretty positive. So far, so good. For the first few minutes, Mario and Amanda engaged in small talk and play talk, just chatting playfully for its own sake and to discover more about their interests and find what they have in common. Once they arrived at the festival, they began to chat about what was going on around them, and from there moved on to childhood memories. At least, that's how this normal, innocent conversation appeared on the surface. What happened beneath the surface is that Mario purposely revealed personal information about his own life to encourage certain reactions and responses from Amanda. Mario also very gently synchronized his body language, his voice tone, and his choice of words with Amanda's, and before long he steered the play talk into low, medium, and possibly, at least from Amanda's point of view, high-risk self-disclosures. Yeah, he made a misstep with the egg-frying joke, but he recovered. He used the incident as feedback and was still able to take the conversation from casual to intimate, at which point he used some private flirting eye work to show off his sexuality. He was also careful not to make another joke after Amanda revealed a more serious soft spot. And since he now knew she was somewhat shy and sensitive, he steered the conversation back to more neutral small talk, offering ice cream, to avoid giving the impression he was crowding or interrogating her. His strategy worked because after, he then revealed another soft spot. She felt safe and relaxed enough to come back with a fairly high-risk intimate disclosure by making a joke about crying at clowns at her own expense. If the process of creating intimacy has 3 gears, the Me Too trigger gets you into 2nd gear, then incidental touching can boost you up into top gear. So let's talk a little bit about incidental touching. The active word here is incidental. This means natural, almost accidental, and only once. Grabbing, fondling, pawing, and all other forms of gratuitous groping are the kiss of death. Incidental touching is done with the hand, and it is brief, it is gentle, it is natural, and it is very definitely non-threatening. You can touch a person's arm or shoulders, but never anywhere that's overtly sexual. The breast, the butt, the inner thigh. This first touch is like a magic wand that can only be used once with full effect. A well-timed, brief touch on the arm should prompt a warm response. If it does, you can follow it up with an appropriately timed, gentle, brief incidental touch to the hand. But beware, you are in his or her private space. If this passing touch isn't reciprocated with a move towards increased physical or spoken intimacy, back off right there, or you're toast. If it is reciprocated, you can proceed to a deeper level of emotional intimacy. By now, the mutual self-disclosure should be flowing more easily. If things are going well, wait a little, then test the mood with a second, brief, yet more deliberate touch to the hand. This is often a precursor to a gentle hand squeeze and then a momentary hand hold, but never, ever an invitation to fondle or grope. But choose your moment with care. Too early, and you're a groper. Too often, and it has no impact. Too late, and the moment has gone. Your first incidental touch can come around the time you're comfortable with medium-risk, mutual self-disclosure, preferably after you've laughed together and leaned into each other a little. The very best time for incidental touching is when you sense you could gaze at each other for 4 or 5 seconds honestly and without embarrassment. So let's watch another scene unfold. See if you can identify the stages as Elaine and Robert pass through them. Elaine is a Toronto primary school teacher in her early 40s. 3 years ago, after 14 years of marriage, her husband left her for a woman who's 10 years younger than Elaine. Elaine's self-confidence took a big wallop, and now she's trying to get it back again. She's determined to approach potential relationships differently. Robert is an architect. Never married, he's had 2 long-term live-in relationships, but has been single now for almost 2 years. Elaine and Robert met at the dog run a few months ago, and now they make it a point to look out for each other. She finds him attractive and easy to talk to. In one conversation, she mentioned she doesn't have a car, and Robert offered to take her out of the city some weekend. Now Elaine has gathered up her courage and decided to take him up on his offer. I've heard that the village of Port Hope has some fantastic antique stores, as well as some great historic buildings. Maybe if we went there, you could teach me the difference between a gable and a lintel. Oh, and she smiles here. And show me a pilaster while you're at it? I've always wondered what the heck a pilaster is. As Mario did with Amanda, Elaine has chosen a date that includes common ground. It's safe, it's different, and will allow them plenty of opportunity for conversation, and she's framed it using some light humour. Robert laughs when she mentions pilasters and happily agrees. In the car on the drive there, they engage in some small talk about the weather and their dogs, both of which are contentedly curled up in the back of Robert's station wagon. Looks like it's going to be a great day, Robert says. Look at that sky. I'm glad it's a bit cool, though, Elaine adds, because the dogs will be okay in the car when we go into the shops. Yeah, they'll be fine, and there's a conservation area just outside Port Hope where we can let them run. Well, I wouldn't call what Bertie does running, says Elaine. Robert chuckles. Bertie is Elaine's laid-back and slightly overweight basset hound, whose long, heavy body and stubby legs don't exactly make him a sprinter. Well, he's soulful, and hey, his legs reach the ground, and that's all that matters. This time Elaine laughs. Bertie and Clara together make a pretty funny couple. Clara is Robert's elegant, long-legged Weimaraner. People will think she's only with him for his money. The small talk and play talk continue as they drive to Port Hope. Then, as Robert parks the car, he says, I'm thinking of adopting a greyhound from one of those greyhound rescue organizations. They get them from the racetracks. Really? Elaine says. She sits up straighter and turns her head to look at Robert as he turns off the ignition and faces her. I just read an article about one of those groups, and I almost phoned them up yesterday to do the same thing. I can't bear the thought of so many of those dogs being destroyed simply for lack of homes. Robert looks up at her. You did? That's amazing. He rubs his chin thoughtfully. Elaine suddenly realizes what just happened. That was a Me Too moment, and she didn't even have to work at it. Elaine casually mirrors his gestures, and she too touches her chin lightly as she says, as a matter of fact, I have 2 rescue cats at home that I got from a cat rescue group. This is a bit of very low-risk self-disclosure, or so Elaine thinks. Ooh, you didn't tell me you had cats, Robert says. He gives a mock look of disapproval. You're supposed to be a dog person. He says it lightly, but Elaine feels that suddenly the connection has been broken. Maybe Robert really hates cats. She has to find out. Well, of course, I am a dog person, she says, throwing a fond glance at the snoozing Bertie. But I'm a cat person, too. But cats are so not dogs, exclaims Robert. They're so unaffectionate and self-centered. There's some kind of soft spot here. More like a little patch of quicksand, thinks Elaine, judging from the intensity of Robert's reaction. Elaine, who has a bit of a quick temper, is about to say, that's ridiculous, but stops herself just in time. Instead, she decides to choose a more upbeat attitude and play it more calmly and diplomatically. That's what a lot of people think, she says, keeping her voice pleasant. They're out of the car now and standing side by side on the sidewalk, but Robert's body language seems somewhat closed, his arms tight at his sides. In fact, continues Elaine, making sure she's now facing Robert, heart pointed at his heart, I used to be like you. I used to hate cats. This is medium to high-risk self-disclosure, but it seems to have done the trick, probably because it also included common ground. I never said I hated them, Robert laughs, his posture softening. It's just that every cat I've ever met has either snubbed me, used my briefcase as a scratching post, or peed on my boots. Murmurs Elaine as they begin to walk down the main street. The true origin of the Puss in Boots legend. Robert laughs. That's good. A little play talk, she figures, can't hurt here. So, how did you go from hating to owning them? Robert asks. We always had dogs growing up, Elaine says, and my parents didn't like cats, so I didn't either. Says Robert. Just like my family, we always had dogs too. My dad thought cats were nuisances. But, continues Elaine, one day a cat chose me. Just showed up on my porch, yowling in a huge snowstorm. I'm not heartless, so I put a box with blankets on the porch and gave it some food and water. Well, it just purred, and it purred, and it purred, and it rubbed up against me. They do that when they want something. Robert's expression is amused, but Elaine can tell he's still not convinced. But this one did it all the time, fed or unfed. He just won me over. He loved to cuddle in my lap and followed me around the house like a dog. And when he died, I was heartbroken. It happened around the same time some other things were going badly for me. Elaine considers mentioning her husband leaving her, but decides that information is too high risk at this point in the relationship. This is not just a soft spot, it's a sore spot. So instead, she'll use something medium risk. And I have to admit, I was at a pretty low ebb. Then I saw an ad for a cat rescue group. I called them, and the next thing I knew, I had 2 tabby kittens. And you know what? You just can't stay depressed with 2 kittens in the house. Well, I agree that kittens can be cute. The trouble is they grow up to be cats. Robert laughs, but his head is tilted away from Elaine. She can't believe he's so close-minded about cats. Something else must be going on with him. She wonders if it's too early to probe. Close-mindedness in any area makes Elaine nervous, so she wants to find out more. Hey, it sounds like maybe you had a terrible experience with a cat in a past life or something, she says lightly, as they pause to look in an antique store window. Well, as a matter of fact, you're right. Robert's voice drops and he looks away from Elaine. That cat that peed in my boot, he belonged to my ex-girlfriend. I swear she loved that cat more than she loved me. She was totally neurotic about it, and the cat was neurotic too. Aha, thinks Elaine. Now we're getting somewhere. Robert has just revealed a sensitive area. Let me see if I can figure this out. Elaine drops her voice a little as well. Animals are pretty sensitive, you know that. The cat was probably jealous, especially if you didn't try to make friends with it. And let me guess, it was a male, and it peed in your boots when things were going badly with your girlfriend. Robert looks at her and laughs. Exactly right, you must be psychic. No, I just know cats. They're much more complicated than dogs. You mean like women are more complicated than men? Robert's tone is slightly challenging, but he's grinning and looking relaxed. Elaine grins back. Play talk is good for now. Hey, I didn't say it, but relatively speaking, dogs are simple and cats are complex. Attention and food from just about anyone, that's all dogs are about. Much as I love them, I don't find them very discriminating or subtle. Kind of like men? Robert asks, his eyebrows shooting up. You know, Elaine says, smiling and raising her eyebrows slightly as she briefly touches the sleeve of Robert's jacket. Complicated can get exhausting. A lot of the time, I just want simple. They both start to laugh and Robert takes a deep breath. You're funny, he says. I like that in a woman, even one with cats. If you look back, you'll notice that from the very beginning, Robert set an upbeat tone, saying, looks like it's going to be a great day. Elaine picked up on that and ran with it in a practical way. I'm glad it's a bit cool, though, because the dogs will be okay. As their light-hearted remarks about the 2 dogs' looks ushered in some play talk, Robert moved into low-risk self-disclosure with free information about adopting a greyhound. Elaine was so stunned at the coincidence that she didn't entirely capitalize on a superb Me Too moment. Saying Me Too lets you inject magic. You can pause when you deliver it, punctuate it with a shift in voice tone or attitude, and in this case, she could have even touched his arm incidentally. Nevertheless, she did let him know that they had some very specific common ground. Whether it was conscious or not, the discovery of this common ground had Elaine synchronizing herself with Robert as she touched her chin and told him about her cats. This turned out to be high risk and not very well thought out, since many people equate a pet's characteristics with its owners, not a good thing considering Robert's low opinion of cats. If you accidentally stumble into a delicate area with another person, use the information as important feedback. Tread lightly, probe gently, and know when to back off, and synchronize like mad to reassure the person that you're sensitive and trustworthy and aren't going to use the information in a harmful way. Hats off to Elaine, however, first for controlling her temper, second for picking up on her faux pas, and third for a superb attempt to realign herself with Robert using open body language and her little "I used to be like you" speech. These mildly strained moments are bound to happen. Elaine inadvertently upset the balance and was gambling that her mixture of animal logic and human emotion could get them back on track. Luckily, she was able to get Robert to volunteer information that explained the reason for the tension. It worked. Robert was beginning to see the intelligent, patient, and caring side of this schoolteacher, and he found it appealing. And Elaine was seeing the kind, reasonable, and slightly vulnerable side of this architect, and she found it very comforting. So, who said 90 minutes is not much time to get to know someone? True, if you and ah and fill the space between pregnant pauses with nothing but small talk and shallow pleasantries, it's not. Likewise, if you ramble on and bore each other to death or sit there and say yes and no and make no effort to truly converse, it can seem like an eternity. And if you're rude or shifty or bossy or pretentious, your date will want to stop the clock at 90 seconds and make a dash for the door. But when you find common ground, pay attention and share your thoughts, you're going to know a lot more about each other after an hour and a half than you did at the outset, and you'll likely be able to say, "I feel like I know you so well. Where did all the time go?" When you're with someone you really like, and you've let the real you come through, using your body, your attitude, your voice, and your words in a natural and easy way, you have prepared the ground for love. Chapter 10. Getting to Love. True love is a unique blend of attraction, intimacy, commitment, and romance. It's utterly personal, and it happens a little differently for every couple. The moment it strikes is easy to pinpoint for some and less obvious for others. Some notice a definite moment when suddenly their whole focus changes. For others, it's more of a flow, a gradual tide of change. Emotional people tend to admit love more quickly than their more rational counterparts, even if the seeds were sown at the same time. So, how do you get from intimacy to love? Up until now, I've offered very concrete techniques. These techniques, adopting a useful, great attitude, flirting, synchronizing, self-disclosure, will bring you to the brink of love, and often beyond. The momentum of two people coming together and discovering their matched opposites is frequently enough to carry them through to love. But if we're going to discuss how to turn an inspiring attraction and connection into true love, we need to move away from the practical step-by-step approach into a more philosophical realm. There's a beautiful Taoist saying that I urge you to reflect on for a day or two. It goes like this: free from desire, you marvel at the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestation. What it means is, if you're looking for things to happen, they tend not to happen. When you know what you want and have done all that you can to get it, at that point, step back and allow events to unfold. If you do this, you'll get more than you could ever have imagined. But if you try to force your desire, all you can see is whether you're getting it or not. It's like trying to force an egg to hatch or a flower to bloom. Instead, you must let go and let life and love transpire in its own creative, surprising way. It's really about having faith in yourself, in life, and in the person you love. Love is infinitely more surprising and exciting than you could ever imagine, but only when you give it the room, the support, and the opportunity it needs to unfold. This is also about non-judgment. Much of our daily anxiety comes from automatically judging our experiences. We do it without thinking. We find ourselves angry, sad, or stressed out because we fantasize about problems and become impatient. Stop judging. Notice the judgments and let them go. Do not act upon them. Love does not happen on command. It's a process that flows. It's a seed that grows. It's a spark that turns into flame. All you have to do is be ready. Put your best self forward, then let go and marvel at the mystery. So let's go back and see how love happened for Mario and Amanda. We said goodbye promptly at 6, Mario told me. I was a bit troubled because towards the end of the date, Amanda started to change. She was getting irritable and impatient as we got closer to saying goodbye. But we clicked. I could actually see it in her eyes. It was like her soul had opened up, and I could fall right inside through her eyes. We told each other what a great time we'd had, but she was acting more and more nervous and excited at the same time, so I took your advice. I didn't force it or jump to conclusions. I asked her if we could meet again. Then she floored me. Not for a week or so, she said. It took my breath away, and it must have shown. She promised to call. We hugged. Well, actually, she hugged me real tight and said, "It'll be fine." And off she rode. I wanted to feel crushed, but I didn't go there, and thank goodness. The next 3 days were awful. Then, on Thursday at work, by absolute fluke, I happened to be at the window overlooking the parking area, and I saw someone slip something under the windshield wiper of my car. It was Amanda. I shot down the stairs, a flight at a time, and flew out the side door, but she'd gone. Hell, was I ever shaking. I walked quickly over to the car, thinking I must have been hallucinating, because even if she'd figured out where I work, there's no way she'd know my car. But there was an envelope taped under the driver's side wiper. Inside was a gift certificate from the coffee shop where we'd met. On the back was handwritten one word and a phone number. The word was when. Now, I thought, right now, this moment. Mario sat back. He was very emotional, and he'd almost finished his story. Anyway, I called, and the rest is history. We met again. It was bliss. We're married. We're mad about each other, and we're having a baby in December. I congratulated him, and we chatted about family life and kids for a few minutes. But then I had to ask him the question. Back up a second. The last thing I heard before all of this was that you were ready to feel crushed. On our date, Amanda told me she'd been seeing this hockey player. Not exclusively, but certainly for quite a while. When we got together, she told me she'd wanted to deal with that before we met again. Mario knew the seeds had been planted. He knew they'd clicked, and he knew everything was in place, but he also knew not to interfere with the natural flow, even though it hurt like heck. Sometimes you simply have to trust that everything will work out and just let go. By setting things free, you allow them to align themselves in perfect time. Elaine and Robert took a bit more time. They both longed for companionship, but after experience with failed relationships, were more cautious than Mario and Amanda. Elaine, in particular, had been bruised by the unraveling of her marriage, and now found herself single and lonely. She longed for the companionship and security that come from being with someone special, but she wasn't about to leap into anything before taking a good, long look. Robert, too, was treading lightly. He regarded his 2 unsuccessful relationships as personal failures. Still, despite their cautious outlooks, both realized they'd found something special in one another. They could laugh together, run with their pets together, and talk together. Elaine confided, "When we first got talking at the dog run in the park, I remember thinking, where did the time go? It was like that every time we met. There was never enough time. Robert made me feel it was okay to dream again. He's very organized, and he got me thinking straight. My life seemed to add up to something more than just the day-to-day routine I got stuck in. On our second date, he told me he felt sparks fly. Nice bit of medium risk. That really woke me up. I'd never have guessed by the way he acted. I almost told him it's the kind of thing I never thought I'd hear again, but that would have been too high risk for me. Still, we took it slowly. We dated for about 6 months before talking about love, and 2 more after that before talking about moving in together. After almost a year of friendship and more than 10 months of dating, Robert and Elaine moved in together. 2 years later, they pooled their resources, relocated, and opened an antique shop in Port Hope, where they spent their first date. Today, they are inseparable. Some folks are more cautious than others. Along with the thrill of new love comes the potential for heartbreak. Some people choose blithely to follow their heart and hope for the best. Others want to be sure they're on solid ground before throwing their lot in together. Both attitudes have their merits. It all depends on your circumstances. The main thing is to be open to love, to allow it to happen in a way that feels comfortable for you. Love is not a destination, it's a process, it's a journey. But how do you keep your love alive and special throughout that journey? The answer is through romancing. You make gestures to show him he's the most important thing in your life. You pay attention to her and take action to show her the romantic fires are burning. Romancing is the art of expressing sentimental love. At its simplest, it's amorous gestures towards the one you love. At its best, it's deliberately creating sentimental memories that serve to form a foundation of specialness on which you build the loving relationships of your life. The key to successful romancing is through the senses. Remember, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Another little story. One day, Martin asked Shelley if she'd mind coming along to a local marina with him after work. He had to deliver something to a friend who was sailing in from across the lake that afternoon. He picked her up, and they drove there together. Martin took a soft canvas sports bag out of the trunk, and they walked over to the transient dock. But Martin's friend hadn't arrived yet, so he suggested they wait at one of the picnic tables that overlooked the marina and the lake. As they sat in the warm sun on the gently rocking dock and waited, Martin said, "You know, this is the exact spot where we met a year ago." "Yeah, I know," Shelley replied, and wrapped her arms around him. After a few seconds, Martin stood up, put his canvas bag on the table and unzipped it. Inside was a bouquet of yellow roses, a bottle of champagne, 2 glasses, and a plate of hors d'oeuvres. "There's no friend," he confessed, smiling. "Happy first anniversary." Shelley's kinesthetic, and she's especially sentimental about the way things feel. Another story. Antonio, who ran a small art gallery, had met Susan, a teacher, almost a year ago when he'd gone with a group of friends to a performance by the Mexican National Ballet Company. Since then, Mexico, Mexican food, and all things Mexican had become romantic notions for them. One sunny afternoon, as Susan led her class out of a field trip to the National Gallery, she saw Antonio waiting on the sidewalk, holding a "Happy Birthday, Susan" sign across his chest. With him was a 5-piece mariachi band that he'd hired, trumpets and all. That was 15 happy years ago. Susan is auditory. She's especially moved by the way things sound. And Antonio knows it. And hats off to Gerard for the unforgettable way he popped the question to Dina. After a romantic dinner at a lakeside restaurant on Georgian Bay, he took her out in a rowboat to watch the sunset. Just as the sun was sinking below the horizon, he presented Dina with a ring and asked her to marry him. There were tears and hugs as she said yes, and Dina didn't notice the flashlight that Gerard had in his hand. As they hugged, he surreptitiously switched it on and waved it towards the shore. It was a signal for 3 of his friends to set off the $220 worth of fireworks he'd brought in, lighting up the sky and reflecting off the lake around them. What a sight it was! Dina is visual. She can be especially stirred by the way things look. And Gerard knew it. Romancing is probably the opposite of common sense, but sometimes it's worth throwing practicality aside to show the one we love how much we care. The best romantic gestures require thought and effort, though. But that thought and effort are usually well worth it in terms of keeping the relationship vibrant and happy, especially when you find out which sense your lover favors most. Think of your love as a fire you must tend with enthusiasm every day. Each of you needs your own pile of logs. Those piles don't have to be the same size, but over time you both have to contribute to keep the fire glowing. When the flame burns bright, it brings warmth and happiness, and you can play in its glow. But if you take the fire for granted, it will go out, and you'll be out in the cold alone. Feed the fire every day. You can give flowers or other surprise gifts, rent a favorite film, read to each other, write little love notes, or just have a cup of tea ready on their arrival home on a rainy day. The possibilities are endless. Keep your fire burning brightly. Epilogue. It all begins with you. Once upon a time, you couldn't swim, and swimming didn't make sense. You thought, if I take my foot off the bottom of the pool, I'll sink. But you'd seen other people swimming, so you knew that even if it seemed impossible, it could actually be done. At some point, your imagination worked with you instead of against you, and eventually you learned how to swim. Now you can do it without thinking, as naturally as a fish. It's the same with finding your matched opposite. Once upon a time, you couldn't figure out why some people appeared to sail through life and have amazing relationships without seeming to try, and you couldn't. But now you have faith in the methodologies you've embraced in these words because they make sense. You've seen other people find their soulmates, and you know that the magic moment will come for you too. Just as with swimming, though, you can't really learn how to fall in love from listening to an audiobook, not even this one. Sure, you can hear about the different swimming strokes, you can learn and understand the theory and the physics behind the sport, but to really get to the heart of the matter, you've got to leap in and learn by doing. And so it is with love. I went out and looked at what's going on when people find love and remain deeply in love, and I put what I learned in this audiobook. I've talked to people who consistently got relationships wrong and had to learn from their mistakes. I've given you the theory, I've given you the techniques, but if you want the chemistry, you've got to make the leap and start practicing. Mere wishing or hoping you'll find the person of your dreams isn't good enough. No matter how persuasive or optimistic you are, you have to get up, go out into the world, and have some experiences. And that's where faith comes in to motivate you. Faith in yourself and faith that the person who's going to sweep you off your feet, complete you, and keep you buzzed forever is out there and will find you when you least expect it. It all begins and ends with your self-talk, the way you explain to yourself what's happening around you. Focus on what's positive and you'll get it. Focus on the negative and you'll get that too. Remember, as your experiences become words, your words become thoughts, your thoughts become ideas, your ideas become actions, your actions become habits, your habits become your personality, and your personality determines your destiny. If true love is to be in your destiny, you must embrace and accentuate the positive. The moment will come when you realize you've found someone you click with so well that love just unfolds as naturally and easily as swimming across a pool. Are you ready? I'm letting go of your hand. You have all the tools you need to ignite the flames of love in your life. You have the kindling, the firewood and matches, but only you can light it. You're on your own now, and you will be fine. When love comes, it will come as a surprise. It always does, out of the blue. That's part of the dizzying mystery of love and the giddy rush of romance. So go ahead and strike up a match. And be ready for the best surprise of your life. Thank you for listening to How to Make Someone Love You in 90 Minutes or Less by Nicholas Boothman, and read by the author. It was directed by Elisa Weberman, recorded by JL Studios, edited by CDM Sound Studios, and produced by Elisa Weberman and Alfred Martino. This has been a Listen and Live audio production. To receive a complete catalogue of other fine audiobooks, please call 1-800-653-9400 or visit the website at www.listenandlive.com. If you enjoyed this audiobook, be sure to listen to How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less and How to Connect in Business in 90 Seconds or Less, both by Nicholas Boothman.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.